have a student over here. Special night tonight because over here you got the color guard, okay? So what they're gonna do is they're gonna come up back there, all very formal, okay? They're gonna come right probably on that stage. There is a American flag, the California flag is in just a little bit. We're expecting okay? They'll be all done that way. And all of the board members are going to be standing up, looking that way. So you just come up here, okay? And then you're going to say, put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. You're going to speak right into this mic, okay? And you'll just pull it down like this. It just goes up and down, okay? So when you first come up, just kind of do this, all right? And then after you're done leading the pledge, you'll stand here because the color guard's going to exit the stage. It'll be very quiet again, and everybody will be standing. And then eventually everybody sit down, so you're standing here. And then at that point, one of the board members is going to say, tonight our student of the month is Heather.
$40. Mr. Huh?
I'll be interested. I'd like to bring the meeting to order and welcome all of you tonight to our board meeting, our May 4th board meeting. We came out of closed session where we accepted the resignation of a teacher employee number 0523, let me say that again, 052034. All right. Do you want to make those announcements now? We'll wait, okay? And now we are pleased to present you a joint JROTC Color Guard presentation and the flag salute afterward by Heather Wolfsleger.
Forward! March! Ready! Hold! Left! Face! Carry! Colors! Reset! Colors!
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Order! Colors!
Right. Face. Forward. March.
What a good job by our JROTC Color Guard. If we could give them a hand, please. Thank you, and I would like to introduce our student representative tonight. Heather Wolfsleger is the ideal student. She has attended Taft Elementary since kindergarten. Her second grade teacher describes her as always extremely hardworking, dependable, and kind towards others. She remembers most her contagious smile. She is one of the most cheerful students and has a positive can-do attitude and spirit. Her fourth grade teacher remembers her as having a great deal of enthusiasm for learning and adventure, her determination to overcome new challenges in both her academic and peer situations, her flexibility in adjusting to new circumstances, and her always present smile make her an exemplary student. She has grown up to be such an awesome human being. She has excellent leadership skills in small and large groups. Her sixth grade teacher sees her greatest strengths as her ability to be up for any kind of adventure. This was very apparent at science camp, where she was always eager for every kind of class activity. Heather has always taken pride in everything she does, which is why she always leaves a positive and lasting impression on everyone she meets. We're very proud and honored to have Heather Wolsleger represent Taft Elementary. Let's give her a hand. Very impressive. Do you want to introduce your family? Who's here? Sure. Go ahead.
My dad, his name is Jeffrey. Yes. And my brother, his name is Devin. And my mom's name is Jenny. And my sister is Nicole. Yeah. Oh, and my principal is Miss Brown. And my teacher is Miss Pearlstein. Yeah.
Good job. Well, we're very proud of Heather. If you guys want to go and work on homework, that would be just fine, or you can stay. Thank you. Okay. I would also like to now let you know that in closed session we also voted to promote or place the following employees into the following positions. And if they could stand up if they're here, we would like to give them a hand. Mr. Justin Grayson, he will be our new Public Information Officer. Justin? Yeah. You want to say something?
Thank you, Madam President. Justin, if you want to remain standing, I'll introduce you to the rest of the folks here. Mr. Justin Grayson currently is a communications analyst for Fresno Unified School District. He sits on the executive cabinet of this school district and serves as the lead writer for Fresno Unified School District's Office of Communications. He manages crisis communications, maintains and manages Fresno Unified School District's social media presence, and he produces, directs, and edits educational feature-style videos for the district. Mr. Grayson has a bachelor's degree of science in journalism with a minor in French and Spanish. Other work experiences: he was a manager and avid director for the entire school district of Philadelphia. He was the program manager and special projects for United Way, and he was associate producer and assignment desk assistant for ABC News in Washington, D.C., just to name a few of his experiences. So, Justin, welcome to Riverside Unified.
I would also now like to introduce Mrs. Katerina Roy Shands, who will be our new coordinator of the School Assistance Program.
Dr. Katerina Roy Shands started teaching in 1991. She worked with severely emotionally disturbed and learning handicapped students. She also taught Spanish. After receiving her master's in counseling and her pupil personnel services credential, she was an outreach counselor conducting individual and small group counseling in a non-public school setting. In 1997, some of you may remember, she came to Riverside Unified School District, where she was a school counselor and categorical program specialist at the middle school level. In 2004, she became middle school and elementary assistant principal in Rialto Unified School District and the Jurupa Unified School District. Currently, she has been an elementary principal at Jurupa Unified since 2009 at Peralta Elementary School, and her counseling administrative background have made her an excellent choice for this position. And Katerina, we welcome you back to Riverside Unified.
And finally, Mrs. Annette I can't roll the R, but it's Raspudik, who will be our new elementary school principal.
Annette Raspudik, she graduated from CSU Dominguez Hills with Bachelor's of Arts, Liberal Studies with a Math Supplemental. She began teaching middle school mathematics in 1995 in the Corona-Norco Unified School District. In 1999, she became interested in more administrative work and was promoted to the position of student advisor in the Corona-Norco Unified School District. In 2009, she received her Master's of Arts in Education and Administrative Credential from Point Loma Nazarene University, and in 2010, she became the principal of a K-8 academy school, where she currently serves as the assistant principal. And again, her extensive curriculum background in K-8 is an addition to bring back or to have with us here in Riverside Unified. And we recognize you and welcome you, Annette, to Riverside Unified.
We are pleased to have you all joining RUSD. Congratulations. All right, now we will move on to some presentations, and we're going to begin with Dr. Hanson. You have the City of Riverside ballot, Measure A.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce Phil Pitchford.
Oh, I missed my performance.
Oh.
I can't do that.
Phil, we have a seat for you right in front.
I'm sorry. You're right. I don't know how. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. The John W. North, I don't know why I did that because I just saw them back there too. The John W. North High School's Ballet Folkloric will perform for the Board of Education.
Hello. Good
Yes.
evening.
Hello.
Okay, we are a club in John W. North High School. It's MECHA. It stands for Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. It's being performed for the students. Some of the students, they never had the opportunity to take classes since they were or visit their country. But here we try to keep our roots alive and learn our own culture. So we are here to share with you guys. So we're gonna present a dance from Spain. Then we're gonna travel all the way down to Mexico City, Mexico to the state of Jalisco. Do we have anybody here from Jalisco? No?
Oh.
I knew that. And also we're gonna present another dance from the state of Michoacán. It's called Los Viejitos. And it's a typical dance, this one here, but I'm just dressed up for you guys so you can share that we like the colors and we try to keep our traditions alive. Okay? Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, that happened.
Okay. One more round of applause. I didn't know they had such a sense of humor in Oaxaca. That was very funny. I loved that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was great. All right, now on to presentations. The City of Riverside ballot, Measure A.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Phil Pitchford, the Intergovernmental and Communications Officer for the city, and he'll give us a brief presentation on their work with Measure Ballot A.
I can't believe I have to follow that. I'm tired just watching. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Phil Pitchford. I'm the Intergovernmental Communications Officer for the City of Riverside. I'll try to be brief. I know you have a full agenda tonight. I did want to do a short presentation about Measure A, which is on the June 2nd ballot. That statement's a little deceptive in that it's an election that's being done all by mail, and the ballots were mailed today. So if you're a registered voter in the City of Riverside, you should be getting a ballot in the next day or two. And there will be other things on there, council elections, things like that. But also on there is Measure A. See if my clicker will work, which it does. As you may know, right now in the City of Riverside, it's illegal to operate a medical marijuana dispensary. It also is illegal to do mobile delivery of marijuana, medical marijuana. Measure A would change both of those things. It would establish a criteria for operating medical marijuana dispensaries in the City of Riverside. It would make them legal in 3 different zones within the Riverside area. It would also allow for the transportation and delivery of medical marijuana, which is currently, as I said, banned, and in fact the city, I believe, argued all the way up to the California Supreme Court to maintain that ban. Measure A, first of all, before I go any further, let me say I'm a city employee, and I'm not here to tell you to vote yes or no. I am here to ask you to vote and make an informed choice. That's a little disclaimer I'm supposed to do at the very beginning. Medical marijuana facilities would be available in the following zones if Measure A were to pass: commercial general, business and manufacturing park, and general industrial. There is also a measure or a clause in Measure A that commits preferred status to a certain group of people who would be able to apply to operate the dispensaries, and they would be people who have operated dispensaries in the past and who sued the city over the city's existing ban. They would have a 180-day period under which they would be able to apply for to operate a dispensary. The Measure A calls for 1 dispensary per 30,000 people. So right off the bat, there would be 10, and when the population reaches 330,000 in Riverside, there would be another medical marijuana dispensary that would be allowed to be opened. Our population right now, according to the Department of Finance, is approximately 317,000 people, so that 330 would probably be in the next 3 to 5 years. Moving forward, that's a map. The areas in red are where we believe, based on a GIS study that we've done, where dispensaries might be located. There are a number of things on that map, and I have some in the back in case people would like a copy. We also note major streets, schools, other landmarks. But as of right now, the areas in red are where we believe the dispensaries could be located. There are some distance requirements. They have to be 1,000 feet from schools, but that does not include daycare facilities, it does include homeschools, and it does not include colleges and universities. They have to be 1,000 feet away from another medical marijuana dispensary, but there's no minimum requirement for homes, parks, or libraries. Measure A would permit the sale of medical marijuana to anyone over the age of 18. It would also permit the sale of medical marijuana to emancipated minors and minors with parental consent. As you know, the law for alcohol is 21. There are a number of things that are called for in Measure A that would govern the dispensaries. They have to be nonprofits. They have to be residents of California. You have to have a qualified patient. Otherwise, you have to have a valid medical prescription from a doctor. There are hours of operation that are called for. The managing members cannot be convicted of a felony within the last 10 years, but there's not a criminal background check for the employees. One thing worth noting is a lot of that is self-verified. It is self-stated. There's not a mechanism within Measure A for the city to ensure that all those things are being done. Another significant point is Measure A is a voter initiative, so the city, through its normal democratic process expressed through the mayor and the city council, would not be able to make changes to Measure A. If it were approved, there would not be a change unless there is a vote of the people. There are a number of things that are listed there that the city would not be able to do without another election in which people would vote to say that they would like that. One thing mentioned there is a conditional use permit. Right now, if you open a liquor store or a massage establishment or a tattoo establishment, you have to get a conditional use permit that says, I agree not to do the following things, and I agree to do the following things, and if you don't do those things, yeah, there's a process for revoking that permit. There is not a conditional use permit that would be required for medical marijuana dispensary, even though the dispensaries would be dispensing a product that is currently illegal according to federal law. So the ballots got mailed today. They are due on June the 2nd. Typically, in an all-mail election, that's M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E. All-mail election, the people typically get their ballots and they vote a lot within the first week, and then there's a little bit of a lull and people vote again probably in the week right before the election. As June 2nd gets closer and closer, do not risk dropping your ballot in the mail. You can come down to City Hall and drop it off in a box they have on the city clerk's office on the 7th floor. I believe you can also take it to the Registrar of Voters. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
So, Mr. Pitchford, does that mean that the city placed this Measure A on the ballot this year?
No, the ballot initiative was actually qualified by a group that is seeking to legalize the dispensaries.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
In fact, there was some litigation that occurred regarding whether or not the measure should be on the ballot, and eventually there was a ruling that it should be placed on the ballot, and that is how we got to where we are right now.
Got it.
Just last slide, there's my name up there and a couple of other people who are working on doing the educational presentations. Phone number if you have any questions.
We have some questions.
Okay.
Mrs. Cloud?
I just have one quick question. I understand, but I haven't seen my ballot, that Measure A is written as a controlling of marijuana facilities. Is that not correct? I mean, it's written in a way that makes it seem like they're trying to control the building of...
It would, to the extent that it has hours and things like that in the measure, then it would control it, but it is, you could argue, is controlled at a higher level right now since it's illegal.
Right. Well, I get that. I am just wondering how. I understood that's how it was written.
Yes, and
Thank you.
there are a number of things within the measure that we need to, if it were to pass, we'd have to figure out exactly how it would be implemented. So.
Mr. Hunt?
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming down, Mr. Pitchford. And I hope you introduce yourself afterwards to our new PIO, and good symbolic with the city and the district. So there's going to be 10 dispensaries just initially, and does that is it extra the mobile, not extra cost, but the mobile marijuana deliveries, is that from those dispensaries?
That's one of the things that we would need to have a hard look at if this were to pass. We believe it would be, and I've read the initiative several times, and I do not believe it states that the 10 would have to be spread out over the geographic region of Riverside. For example, if you wanted to cluster 5 of them in an area, as long as they were 1,000 feet away from each other and in the proper zone, I believe you'd be allowed to do that. And if you wanted to put 3 more in another area, as long as they're 1,000 feet away from each other, you'd be able to do that. The mobile delivery, it would be, and this would, I mean, to the extent that you have rules in place that keep drugs off school grounds, I think that would supersede this. But to the extent that somebody would want mobile delivery at their home, at their workplace, if they can do that, you know, if they own the business, I assume, that would be problematic, because at the very least, you can be assured that there would be marijuana within the vehicle, because that's what they're delivering. And to some extent, because marijuana is still illegal according to federal law, a lot of times the banks will not accept money that's derived from medical marijuana. So to some extent, it's a bit of a cash business. So there would be potentially cash there as well.
I'm sorry, Phil, I'm interrupting.
Or maybe both.
What laws, if it were to pass, what laws then govern their regulation, their deliveries, et cetera, their sales?
Well, the only law that would govern Measure A is Measure A. We would not be able to go in and say, well, you can only deliver these hours. It would. That's my understanding from the city attorney's office, is that if it's not in Measure A, we can't tell them they can't do it. It is worth noting that it's very likely, if not probable, that at least one, if not as many as four, measures might be on a statewide ballot next year dealing with the legalization of marijuana in California, not just for medicinal use, but also possibly for recreational use. There are a number of bills working their way through the legislature right now that are designed to anticipate that and set up a regulatory structure for dealing with widespread sale of medical marijuana across California. Some of them are more problematic than others, I'll say.
Well, it is our being RUSD's unfortunate realization that about 7 out of 10 children that we have to expel from our district are because of marijuana, bringing marijuana on campus, et cetera. So it's obviously a detriment to our education system. Thank you for coming down, Mr. Pittsburgh.
I did notice on your map that because of the way this has been created, that you've allowed the industrial areas to be used primarily for these dispensaries. But if you took a look, you have one little square. I assume that's North High School that you have exempted because it's in a fairly industrial area.
There are a number of weird little islands of red in there, and some of those are because there are schools that create 1,000-foot zones around the schools.
I was thinking more of north within that. You have one little square out of the industrial area on the east side.
Right.
Maybe we could put it up again. Yeah, do you see that little square, that little white square in the middle of the red up there? I assume that's North High School.
Actually, I think that might be a little too, well, I don't know, maybe it's not. I think that might be too far north for North High School. If that's kind of ironic.
Oh, good. I thought of North High School being surrounded by dispensaries, and I was not excited about it. I think 1,000 feet's not enough anyway.
If you see the little dots of red, there's a couple of them here and there.
Yeah.
Another thing is areas like University Avenue have specific plans assigned to them to dictate the development of a property along areas that have specific plans. And the interpretation from the city attorney's office is those would be specific plans, not commercial, so that dispensaries would not be permitted in areas where there are specific plans. But of course, a court would obviously have to determine that.
Well, this is kind of clustering those dispensaries in certain areas that, I don't know.
And I, to the extent that somebody wants to, I mean, it's very common in a lot of businesses to cluster things together because it's an area that people want to go to eat restaurants or they want to go to shopping or things like that. And that's also to the extent that there's nothing that says it can't be done within the measure itself. You have to assume, just for planning purposes as a city, that it would be permitted,
right.
Which would be, possibly problematic.
Mrs. Lockdawson?
Thank you, Mr. Pitchford. So this is a voter initiative, right?
That's correct.
This was developed and put on, it's going to go on the ballot by signature. Folks have, right? So it's not a city initiative. So what did the city use to come up with this? I mean, do you know what parameters you used to develop this map?
I think it's GIS based, and that we have a lot of our zones are coded into our GIS system, and then we try to determine, in terms of the GIS system, show us things that are of these zones that do not have specific plans and are not, 1,000.
So you used your existing zoning then to put some parameters on it and then put in what the initiative is describing as would be allowed, and then that's how the map was created. Okay.
And I can't warrant, obviously, with anything that's done with a computer that's done by the hand of a human being, that's 2,000% always correct.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew I was understanding the map correctly. Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Clapp?
Just one real quick comment as I was looking at it again. The clusters are generally in the poorer areas of town, which kind of tells us a couple of things. But anyway, it's concerning. Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
All right. And now we have a wonderful presentation about the North High School Boys Varsity Basketball Team and their student leaders and the trip to Yangmen, China. Mr. Garcia.
Good evening, Mrs. Elevy, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. About 1 month ago, students and staff from North High School and different programs, including the basketball team and their North Star newspaper and their student leadership group and Chinese classes had the opportunity to travel to 3 major cities in China. And so to talk about this, we have some students and staff, and I'll ask Dr. Lynn Sheffield, principal of North High School, to come on up and start the presentation.
Wonderful.
Good evening, Board President, Mrs. Alevy, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Hansen, and the community. I'm very excited to be here tonight to present to you a review of the John W. North High School trip to Yangmen, China. We had an absolutely wonderful trip, and on behalf of our students and our staff and the parents that came along with us, we'd like to thank all of you for your support and your donations to help us get there. Joining me this evening, we have members of our basketball team. So young men, if you guys could stand for me. Students from our journalism class, if you could stand, as well as students from our IB Chinese class and student leaders, if you could all stand. The adults attending the trip, we had the pleasure of having some parents join us, and I think I have 1 or 2 parents out there. Is Mr. Nunley out there? In addition to that, our staff members that attended were Greg Shive, Roland Feasy, Dr. Joe, Becky Porter, Mike Barty, and his assistant coaches, Preston Anderson, Ryan Rogers, and Matt Mosley. You guys could all stand. I'm going to be very quick up here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the podium over to Coach Mike Barty to address the board.
Great.
Board President and all famous people up here, I'd like to...
Oh, bring the mic. Bring
I'd
the
like
mic.
to take a minute to thank you for your support. Went over there, I kind of not knowing what to expect, and probably came back with one of the greatest experiences that I've had since I've been at North, and that's been a long time. And the most surprising part is most of it didn't have anything to do with basketball. So we do thank you for your support. It couldn't have happened without you, and we really appreciate the support and everything you did for us. And on behalf of my team, I have a couple plaques here that commemorate our season that we'd like to leave with the board president for the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Second plaque is for Dr. David Hansen. Thanks again for all your support, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
The trip to China was a chance of a lifetime, and I'd like to bring up our activities director, Ms. Becky Porter, and students to provide a short presentation to show you some of the wonderful opportunities we had to experience. So, Ms. Porter, if you can come on up.
Good evening, Mrs. Alevy, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. My name is Becky Porter. I have the joy of being the Student Activities Director at North High School. A special thank you for your support of our trip to Yangmen and the support of former Principal Dale Kinnear and International Relations Council President Jelani Bakari, who made this adventure happen. Throughout my 32 years in education, I can honestly say I have not had an opportunity equal to that of the field trip that we took to our sister city in Jiangmen. From traveling about the country, visiting historical sites, meeting local people, and spending time at Jiangmen No. 1 High School, both in the classroom and in the gymnasium, I was amazed at the wonderment that is the People's Republic of China. Even more amazing, though, was watching our students' eyes widen as they experienced another world. Tonight, we have 4 students who will present their perspective of the 5 legs of our journey, if you will. Our PowerPoint is also divided into 5 sets of slides. Our students will speak of the preparation of our trip, our brief stay in Hong Kong, our 5-day visit to Jiangmen, including homestays, our 4 days in the capital city of Beijing, concluding with final thoughts. If I could please have the students come up to the podium. These 4 will be introducing themselves, and we're also happy to have given you a picture of all of us with our host families. This was taken in front of Jiangmen No. 1 High School, and it includes the 21 students, the 9 adults, the 7 parents, and all of the host families, parents, and the children. So we hope that you'll enjoy that photo. That's great.
Good evening, Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the school board. My name is Bria Palmer, and I am the president of the United Student League at North. I would like to discuss our preparation for our trip to China. 2 months before the trip, Mr. Kinnear held seminars every Tuesday for about an hour to familiarize ourselves with their history of our sister city, Chinese culture, living habits, economics, politics, and currency exchange. We even practice using chopsticks with different types of snacks like chips and trail mix. Throughout the seminars, we were asked to practice some common Chinese phrases as well, my favorite being ni hao ma, meaning how are you? We also were assigned jobs and responsibilities to stay organized while on the trip. Some students were in charge of attendance, handling money exchange, passing out and collecting passports, weighing and tagging luggage. I myself was assigned to the emails to parents and family back home for them to keep them in the loop for everything that was going on. With about 40 members on this trip, it helped us move smoothly for the most part. Once it was the day to fly out from LAX, we first met at North to check bags and most importantly to say goodbye to our family and friends. You can tell many parents were nervous to leave their child and not see them for almost 2 weeks. Personally, I felt excited to be on my own. Once we got to the airport, we waited a couple of hours, then boarded our 14-hour plane ride to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we left LAX on Sunday and arrived in Hong Kong on Tuesday, completely skipping Monday. The time difference is about 15 hours. Right from the airport, we went on a 10-hour bus tour through the city. The city was crowded and the buildings went straight up, making room for the 7 million people. Throughout the bus tour, we stopped for lunch and dinner at 3 Chinese restaurants. Since their food was fresh, you can actually walk into the restaurant and see tanks full of sea creatures. Their food was quite strange. Most of it was wrapped in a material that you could either eat with it and find a mystery underneath or unwrap it itself. My favorite food was probably this thick white dumpling meat with meat in the middle. After the long tours and seeing the differences from back home, the biggest would probably be the bathrooms. Most of them were on the floor, just a hole, so the women had to squat. By the end of the trip, it was almost a natural thing to do, I could say. At the end of the day was my favorite because we went to the Temple Street night market and got to bargain to shop. This is where I got my journal to do my nightly thoughts about the day. Mr. Kinnear had access all to write a journal entry every day. The journal was originally 90 Hong Kong dollars, but I got it for 60 Hong Kong dollars. The money system in Hong Kong is about $1 US dollar equals about 8 Hong Kong dollars. Even Hong Kong has a different money system from mainland China because there's two systems under one government. So I purchased it for about $7.50. It was an interesting, fun experience for the end of the day. And then next we are headed to our sister city, Jiangmen.
Good evening, Ms. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. Hi, my name is Dikembe Martin, the point guard for the John W. North basketball team. During our China trip, we spent the majority of our time in Riverside sister city, Jiangmen. We arrived in Jiangmen after traveling on a ferry boat for an estimated 3 hours. Once in Jiangmen, we took a bus to eat a Chinese dinner and then planned to arrive at our sister school. The Chinese food we ate consisted of meats such as duck and goat, which was surprisingly better than I expected. Also, different kinds of fish and vegetables were served, which myself and many others were not accustomed to seeing or eating. Once finished with our first meal in Jiangmen, we're en route to our sister school close by. I envisioned a warm welcome, but nothing close to over 3,000 kids, all excited to see John W. North players, teachers, and students. For the hour-long welcome and exchange of cultures through dancing and singing, we were quickly able to feel at home, despite being thousands of miles apart. My team was also granted the luxury of playing 3 basketball games. Before each game, we were able to interact with children of the school by participating in calligraphy, joining Chinese classes, and traveling with our homestay. Our first game we played was an inter-squad scrimmage. Our second, we challenged the Jiangmen #1 high school. And in our final game, we faced the best team in Jiangmen, which ended in a buzzer-beater loss. After every basketball game, our team was swarmed by students asking for pictures and autographs like we were celebrities. My most memorable part of visiting Jiangmen was seeing how much of a positive influence we made on others' lives, and learned this trip was much bigger than just basketball. I'm proud to say I've traveled to China and would like to thank everyone who made this life-changing experience possible. Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and other members of the board. My name is Deshaun Heiler, and I'm also a member of the boys basketball team. I'm going to be talking about our stays with the Chinese families in Jiangmen, and these stays were known by the group simply as homestays. The homestays were a great experience for all of us, even though some of us had better experiences than others. Ron and I, for example, stayed with a particularly wealthy family who lived in a 3-story home in a gated community. We were fortunate enough to have Western toilets and lovely showers in our bathrooms. And Jeffrey, our host family's son, was nice enough to take us out for American food most days and nights. The host families accompanied us on a visit to Kaiping, which is a historical community in the Guangdong province, which is where Jiangmen is located. Ron and I also celebrated the Festival of the Tomb with the family at the grave sites of their ancestors, and these grave sites were actually up in mountains, because they're old. Many of us were lucky to stay with families like Ron and I, but others stayed in homes with wooden mattresses, Eastern toilets, which, as Bria explained, are pretty much holes in the ground, that had a shower head and or a hose above for showering. They were stationed directly above the toilet. Also, most were not fortunate enough to have the luxury of American food during their stay. But when I was sharing my homestay experience with a Chinese friend I made, his name was Chuck, he told me that most Chinese weren't as well off as me and Ron's family. And this made me realize that perhaps the people who seemed to be unlucky with the families that they were given were actually the luckiest, because they were exposed to a Chinese culture and an everyday lifestyle that we didn't really get to see, and that was the true Chinese culture and everyday lifestyle. And I was thinking that that was the reason that we were sent on this trip in the first place. I just personally want to thank you guys for one of the greatest experiences of my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Alvey, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. My name is Jonathan Opsahl. I'm the executive online editor for the North Star, our high school's newspaper. I was one of the 3 student journalists selected to be a part of this once-in-a-lifetime trip, and my role during the trip was to take pictures and record and report the trip back to North so we could cover it in the North Star. I want to spend my time to talk a little bit about Beijing. In order to get to Beijing from Zhongmen, we took a bullet train along the longest high-speed rail in the world. Going 187 miles per hour, we covered 1,200 miles during the 8-hour trip. Our homestay families told us a lot about Beijing, emphasizing the air pollution and the historical value of the city. They made it clear that it was a privilege to visit such an important city. When we first arrived to Beijing, we were again in the big city environment, much like Hong Kong. Beijing has a unique mix of modern development and ancient architecture. We were able to visit modern marvels like the Bird's Nest and the Cube from the 2008 Olympics, as well as world wonders like the Great Wall of China, all in the same day. At the Great Wall of China, we became true heroes and heroines. At least, that's what the locals told us. At all of the major landmarks we visited, we were swarmed by street vendors selling hats, toys, or little trinkets, telling us they will give us a special price. We also had the chance to test our negotiating skills at a 5-story mall known for its knockoff brands. These stops were fun, but to see what made Beijing so unique, we had to look at the bigger picture. As we drove down the freeway in our tour bus one day, it seemed as though we were riding through 3 different cities in different time periods. To the right, we could see a plaza with its new futuristic buildings, flat-screen TVs, and businessmen and women going to work. To the left, we could see rundown apartment buildings, cramped and weathered, with beggars out front. And straight ahead, we saw the classic Chinese architecture of the Tiananmen Square, with masses of tourists and locals alike. To me, this blend of lifestyles and the chance to experience the deep-rooted culture of the city made Beijing a special part of our trip. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
In conclusion, on behalf of North's basketball team and student leaders, we would like to thank you for this opportunity to travel to China. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hunt, did you want to make a comment?
Bria, can I ask you a question? Hi, Bria. President Palmer, can I ask you a question? Were you able to meet, was there a counterpart to you there at that high school? Was there a student body president?
At the high school, they had an organization, but not, I wouldn't say body president, no, student body president.
So it wasn't, okay. And then how about, Jonathan's not up here, but Jonathan, did they have a student newspaper or communications? Oh, they were interested in what you had, okay. And I just wanted to ask the young men, the basketball players, what was, I know the scores and all that, and you played well. What was the sportsmanship like? Basketball is basketball, but once you get on the court, how do they conduct themselves? I know how North conducts themselves under Coach Barty, and always is great representatives of our city. But how do they conduct themselves? Maybe Sean? You learned something, all right. Yeah. Very good, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alvey.
That's great. Mrs. Lock-Dawson?
So I thought just the basketball team was going. I'm surprised. So you had more than just the basketball team, right? So can someone tell me exactly who it was again and how you guys landed on who got to go? Yeah, I thought it was just the b-ball team. So
we wanted an opportunity for other students to participate. So we did want to bring back an opportunity for someone from the newspaper because we wanted our student body to share in the experience. So we did bring a couple of journalism students, and he is an editor. Is your position an editor? And so we brought one of the editors. We brought students from the Chinese class. Very helpful. Without the students from Chinese class and Dr. Zhou, we might not have made it in several situations. So they were invaluable. And we brought student leaders from the leadership class.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you bring AVID leaders too? Kids from the AVID class?
Do we have students? 4 or 5 students from our AVID program. We have
very
several
good.
of the students that are in the basketball team, student leadership, that are in our international baccalaureate program. So we covered the spectrum with the students.
Good.
Okay. I just was curious because I think it's a really cool opportunity for kids to get to do, and I will say I know my friend Sun Wen, and I won't say his name because he's sitting in the crowd right now, and I would just embarrass the heck out of him. But she said that he came back a changed man-child. What do you want to call him? I don't know. But that his whole perspective on his life changed. So I have to say I know travel is an education all of its own. So thank you for doing that. Thank you. That's wonderful. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Hunt?
Yes. Were you able to meet with your counterpart at the high school and just, I know it's pretty quick, and I'll believe you. What was your experience?
We spent about 5 days in Zhongmen, and so definitely because it is our sister school, I did have an opportunity to meet with the principal one-on-one. We discussed the different programs that we offer within our school as opposed to the programs that they offer in China. We met with their assistant principals, their counterparts. I did have the pleasure, along with Mr. Shive, we taught an English class, and that was an experience in itself. Our teachers had the opportunity to visit classrooms and see how the classes are taught. And so we all had an opportunity to get within the school and have a true experience of what it's like.
And most of the funds were raised by the people going and the young people going. Is that correct? Donations and all that?
Community.
Community, I should say, yeah.
Correct. All of the donations for our student population were donated, and our parents that attended, they did pay for themselves to participate with us.
Thank you. That was Alan.
Well, tell us what the classroom was like over there in our sister high school. Come on over. Come on over.
It was. It was much like I expected. They were very excited, like some of the boys have said. They were very excited to spend time with us. There were no real classroom management issues. No one asked to go to the bathroom. So we taught. I'm not an English teacher, but Dr. Sheffield and Mr. Kinnear asked us to teach an English lesson. So I taught a lesson on simile and metaphor, and I think it went pretty well. They seemed to be pretty happy with the result. I tried to use some of my odd examples I use in my everyday class, and so they thought those were entertaining, and it was a great experience.
Good.
It was a great experience, but they were lovely kids, and they just wanted to just absorb everything that we had to offer. As little as sometimes I thought it was, they just were enamored with us, which was pretty fascinating. So that was a great time. So again, of course, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was amazing.
That's great. That's great.
What's
Becky,
that?
Becky, did they have a
Yeah.
activities director? No?
They actually had a student union that hosted the calligraphy and the cutting activities that we did, and I did not meet the teacher that was in charge of that. It was all student run.
Oh,
we did
interesting.
have lunch. We had a few meals with the principal, the assistant principals, and a lot of English teachers. That was really who spent their most of the time with us, were the English teachers that helped us communicate.
That's great. Well, what a lucky experience for you kids. This is a rarity, I'm constantly amazed at people I meet who have never been very far out of Southern California, let alone to China. What a neat opportunity to get to go to someplace so different and so far away with a different culture. That's really great. Thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation. really fun. Okay, and now we have our high school representatives from the Educational Options Center and Virtual School, Paige Vaughn. Oh yeah, everybody, if you don't want to stay, if you want to go home and do homework, this is your chance. Paige, just wait just a second until the noise dies down. Okie doke. Go ahead. I think it's died down a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen.
Well, actually, bring it down just a little bit. Yeah, try that. Okay. Trying to get the best spot for it.
Okay. Hello, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and other board members. My name is Paige Van, and I'm representing EOC. To start, I said tomorrow we have the AVID Awards. That was actually on Friday, so it already happened. It was a ceremony for the county. On Wednesday, AVID is going on a field trip to California State University in Los Angeles. And we also had our first 2 AVID graduates, which is exciting because it's a new program as of last year. We also finished the state testing, and a majority of the 11th graders reported that the questions were both more interesting and in some cases more difficult, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Last Saturday, we attended the prom, which we have King High School to thank for the invitation. Today's featured students are RVS student Kieran Trisick, who is going to state for his History Day project, and we'll know the results by next Monday. And then another full-time RVS student named Jada Hart is currently ranked 851 on the International Juniors Tennis. This is just a good example for students that do attend EOC and what they're able to do attending it. And it's convenient, which it's convenient in Head Start, for tongue twister.
Yeah.
It's convenient in Head Starting their career, such as tennis for her. And that's all for tonight. May the 4th be with you.
Thank you. Let me try to figure this out. Did King invite you to their prom?
Yes.
How nice.
I think they do that every year.
Every year King does that?
Yeah.
Well, that's very, very nice. Where was the prom this year? Did you go? Did you go?
I didn't go.
Oh, you didn't go?
Know about it until after it happened.
Well, obviously we need to get the word out more about that. That's pretty neat. Well, thank you. That's great, Paige. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you so much. All right. Now we will have Allison Baer. Yes. Very good. Thank you. Allison Baer from John W. North High School.
Ni hao, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. So a lot of really exciting things have happened at North since my last report. So as you guys heard, the boys basketball team and a lot of us student leaders came back from our trip from China, which was just a phenomenal experience. It was a great bonding experience and a great learning experience. And we even got to bond with our Chinese homestay families, and we still keep in contact with them now, so that's great. To commemorate North's 50th year on campus, USL recently hosted a dinner and a show event, and we'd like to thank Dr. Hansen and his family for attending. So the night consisted of a nice Italian lasagna dinner, and then the final production of our spring musical, which was Footloose. It was a phenomenal performance by our cast, and it was a really fitting send-off for our theater director, Miss Grotness's 31 years at North High School. So she'll be retiring this year. Also, to improve our campus unity and recognition on campus, we have 2 really exciting events going on this week. We have our Unity Week hosted by our Multicultural Council, as well as our Teacher Appreciation Week this week. So for Unity Day, Unity Week, we're going to be celebrating all of the diverse cultures represented on campus. So tomorrow for Cinco de Mayo, we're going to be having the Mecha Club perform a ballet folklorico routine again during lunchtime. And then also for Teacher Appreciation Week, we had USL members invited our wonderful teachers to come eat some nachos with us at a nice nacho bar. So it was really wonderful. And we've also given them nice thank you cards just to say thank you for all of their hard work this year. To recognize our students, this past April, North's journalism students traveled to Denver for the National Scholastic Press Association's High School Journalism Convention. So while there, we got to learn a lot about writing, design, photography to improve our publications for next year. So you have the North Star in front of you, and the North Star actually won 2nd place in the nation in the Best of Show competition. And our Polaris Literary Magazine, which is right here, also won 6th place in the nation. So we're very excited about that. Also, we had an amazing senior, Angel Viscara. He was recently named a Gates Millennium Scholar, and he's going to be going to USC next year, where he plans to major in communications and journalism. So we're very proud of him. Looking forward, we have a lot of exciting events, including our senior versus staff basketball game and our Powder Puff football game, which will take place in late May. And all of these events will lead up to North High School finishing the year strong and in celebration as we commemorate our 50th graduating class on June 10th at our very own stadium. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Tell us what was your highlight of your China experience?
Well, one of the things that I got to do was my homestay's name was Vanessa, and she had this little group of friends, like 5 friends, and they were all so very nice. So we went shopping together. We got our scalps massaged and our for like 30 minutes. It was very nice. And then we got our hair cut, and then we got it styled. It was very nice. Yeah, I was in one of the richer families, but it was very fun. Yeah, so we had a nice girls' weekend.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you had to deal with the bathroom issue, is that it?
I did learn how to squat. Yeah, it was okay. But then, at the schools, they have the toilets on the ground. You also have to bring your own toilet paper as well, and they don't use paper towels. So you wash your hands and then
shake them dry.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with the language with these friends?
All of the Chinese students, they were in the international portion of the school, so they're studying in order to go to school in America or Australia or England, so they know English.
And how is their English?
Their English is very good.
Gosh, that's great.
I was actually very impressed.
Good. Well, that's great. And so you had a great trip.
I had a great trip.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Oh, Mrs. Kahn?
I just saw an article that said the Chinese population was the fastest growing immigrants into America. So you guys were on the cutting edge.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's
a lot
great.
of them are studying to take their SAT to come to school in America. They really want to go to Harvard.
Well, yes, I bet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. All right. And from Riverside Polytechnic High School, Mae Johnson.
Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. My name is Mae Johnson, and I will be reporting on behalf of Poly High School. As the school year is winding down, Poly is turning to focus more of its effort on schoolwork and academic studies. However, we still have a chance to have a little bit of fun in our 4th quarter. Prom was held on April 11th with the highest attendance rate that Poly has seen in 6 years. And I think that might have been due to the fact we held it at the aquarium, which was really fun. You could dance, or if you wanted to go walk and see the fish, you could also do that. Additionally, Poly's first boys first boys volleyball team is well into their season, and we have a full varsity and JV team, which is great that there's interest in the sport. And many of the boys haven't played it before. They're just football players on it, basketball players on it, and sometimes volleyball players who may have transferred from other schools earlier in their life. They're not doing exceptionally well, perhaps to the fact that they are very new, but that hasn't really stopped Poly from coming out and supporting them and really banding together just like we do for a bigger sport like football. So I think it's kind of heartwarming, and it's getting our team off to a really great start. And AP testing started today, and this year we have the highest number of students taking their tests, maybe to the fact that they're being paid for this year, which definitely helps. And versus last year, however, we do have more kids enrolled in AP classes too, so go Poly. Last week, our principal, Dr. Rowe, attended a conference at Harvard University where he discussed Poly's future partnering with the school and their Caring Common initiative. Dr. Rowe presented the student-made plan, which is attached to your report that I gave you. It's a little chart graph, which is attached to my report, in which Poly, excuse me, I am just so tongue-tied, in which it details Poly's plan to fully examine our pride, passion, respect, integrity, perseverance, and extraordinary acronym, with emphasis on relations, ethic, and empathy on our campus. In alliance with Harvard's program, we, speaking for the school in general, are hoping to develop a response and approach to the widespread anonymous social media bullying that unfortunately plagues many high school campuses. The plan is still in its first stages, and it will start to be fully implemented next year by leadership programs, athletics, and academic groups next year, such as Puente and AVID. And all the logistics and details are still being nailed out. This is all very exciting news as we're branching out and putting a solid plan into place to help put a stop to many things that tend to be overlooked on high school campuses. And I must say that I'm proud of the strides that Poly is making towards this, not only in RUSD, but also on a national level, reaching out to schools like Harvard. And I'm very excited to see where Poly takes this in every aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Lockdasson.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. May, is this your last high school report before you graduate, or do you have one more?
I think I have one more, but I'm not 100% positive, to be honest.
They have one more in June, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And I was just wondering, I know you're a senior. Who else is a senior? All three of you. So we're going to get a whole new crop of girls out there next year. Or guys, sorry. Okay. Just wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. From Ramona High School, Tracy Doan.
Good evening, Madam President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. My name is Tracy Doan. I'm here to represent Ramona High School. So 10 of our Ramona students received the 25 Most Remarkable Teen Awards, and by far we had the most in comparison to all comprehensive high schools in Alberta and RUSD. The 10 winners include Andy Meza, Christopher Paz, Joanna Tiscareno, Karen Quatley, Christine Flores, Yvette Martinez, Amanda Arantes, Leslie Vergara, Nathan Williams, and myself. On March 4, an LCAP meeting was held in our school's cafeteria to discuss the expenses of the programs on our campus, including clubs and sports. On March 3rd, from period 5th through 6th, our ASB organized a leadership bonding activities for all the clubs at our school, and we had a chance to form a connection among all the clubs and all the sports. On March 27, we had our spring pep rally, and the theme was glow-in-the-dark outer space. We used black lights, spotlights, glow-in-the-dark paint, and glow stick, which lit up our whole gym, and everyone had a great time. Our Sadie Hawkins dance was March 17th, and our theme was Hawaiian, and our prom was May 2nd at the Fox Theater in Redlands, and our theme was Old Hollywood. Our tickets were sold out to 500 students, and we had great feedbacks from all the students that attended. Our whole link crew program attended the TED Talk at UCR on the 17th of April, and they'll be participating in a high rope course team bonding activity at UCR. For our performing art, there was a dance production on March 4th and 6th, and our choir and band concert were held on March 10th. On March 12th and 13th, there was a Southern California School Band and Orchestra Association all-day festival. Our concert percussion finished third place bronze at AGLA. Our Suzico, the musical, will be held on May 7th through 9th, and our choir candlelight was held on April 10th and 11th. Our AVID program recently organized a staff appreciation luncheon on Thursday, April 30th, and each grade level were assigned something to bring. So our freshmen brought drinks, sophomore brought appetizers, junior brought desserts, and senior brought the main dishes. And our AVID seniors recently attended the RIM Senior Recognition at UCR on May 1st, and we received our sashes and our medallion for graduation. For our athletic, the girl basketball broke the school record for consecutive wins this season and are also moving on to the second round of playoff. Our cheer competition team finished second place at the Vegas National. Our tennis team went on a field trip to Palm Desert Tennis and BNP Paribas Open on March 9th. And our boys tennis and our baseball team are also undefeated in league. Boys tennis at 3-0 and the baseball team is at 4-0. And that's it. Thank
Very
you for listening.
good. And congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
a big honor.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you deserve it. Okay, thank you so much. All right, now we're at the district superintendent's report. Dr. Henson.
Thank you, Madam President. A lot of wonderful, exciting things going on at all of our schools this time of year. Proud of all the students and staff for working so hard. To start my superintendent's report this evening, I'd like to first invite Dr. Kirk Lewis, Assistant Superintendent of Operations, to come forward and give the board an update on Prop 39 and energy savings. Following Dr. Lewis, I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Support, Renee Hill, to come up and share with the board an update on state testing, because we find we're in the middle of state testing for all of our schools. And following Renee, then I'll share a few of the activities I've been involved with. Dr. Lewis.
Mrs. Alvey, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I'm really proud to present to you the progress we've made on our Prop 39 projects. As you know, this is the California Clean Energy Jobs Act that has provided funds to school districts. Last year was our first year where there was just about $2 million available for Riverside Unified to participate. And it's not that the money is just given to you. You have to apply for the projects. In the first year, it was a very restricted program. I must say we have a really strong team with Orrin Williams, Mike Fitzgerald, Mary Jane Guile, and Reggie Royster taking the primary team lead, putting these projects together and doing the calculations that allowed us to participate and present an application that was accepted by the state. The first series of projects included retrofitting light fixtures and also replacing the air conditioning units on portable classrooms. We did this at 3 sites. We did it at North High School, EOC, and Highgrove. And I want to particularly note the light retrofit project because it's one that it has such a quick payback. It pays back in 2 years. So, and I want to describe it to you because it's simple technology, but it's absolutely wonderful in what you get out of a simple retrofit. So you take your typical 4-foot fluorescent fixture in a classroom, you clean it up, you put in a reflector kit that reflects all the ambient light that usually stays up in the fixture. It comes reflecting down. We take 2 of the lamps out of that fixture, and you get the same light on the work surfaces in the classroom. In fact, when the students and teachers came back after the work was done, they didn't know anything had been done. And so it was a great benefit to not only our energy savings, but also to the classroom itself. In fact, that item is presented to you as a notice of completion today, and the energy or the air conditioning retrofits will be upcoming this summer. Following through into year 2. Year 2, the restrictions of the program came off a bit, gave us a lot more flexibility. Our focus was not only to get good energy savings, but also to improve the conditions in areas of schools that just quite frankly needed some help. So we had 7 sites that are getting projects ranging from the light retrofit to energy management system replacement, air conditioning system replacements, and exterior lighting replacements. That was a $1.7 million allocation for us, and so we'll be applying for those funds and then actually starting that project, we'll hope, this summer. So just good news to report, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you. That is good news. Okay. I'm happy to know that the lighting was good with that, because when you first said you were going to take out 2 light bulbs, I thought, oh, but I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Alvey, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I just want to give a short little update on progress with Smarter Balanced testing. Smarter Balanced is the part that we talk about. It's really part of the state testing system called CASP. So we'll have to get familiar with that term too over time, because we're still giving the science, for example, at grades 5 and 8 and on paper. I first want to express my thanks to parents and students who have dealt with a complete change in the system. They're dealing with it really well, and also to our teachers and principals, because the entire system is different. How you administer the test, how you follow up with students, how you support students in being successful, and the student experience is completely different. Also, it has taken a good amount of work across departments this time: technology services, research departments, special ed, and many others who pitched in just to be at schools to help out if things went sideways on the first couple of days. The testing functioning has been going well. We did experience one day network problem with filtering, but the communication was good. We were able to get it addressed and then restart the students that needed to be restarted. And then the expected sporadic odd things here and there where the testing app doesn't come up or the sound doesn't work correctly. But so far we've been able to resolve any issues that have come up. A few schools are finished already, and a few schools have yet to start. So with this test, the testing window is a lot longer. We asked schools to stagger and got their schedules ahead of time so that all the students wouldn't be hitting the network at the same time. So we're spread over a bit of time. And that pretty much summarizes where we are right now.
How about we have some questions? Mr. Lee?
Yeah, just a couple questions. In regards to the technology that we're using, the actual devices, does it seem like we made the correct decision, and do we have enough devices for our school sites to share and it's efficient?
I think it's correct, but I don't have anything to compare to. We chose Dell Chromebooks. We bought a sufficient number at schools to cover the grade levels within a certain time span, because the grade spans, elementary, middle, and high, have a different amount of students to test. And it seems to be working well. My director of research, Dan Patterson, has recommended that we make the student-to-device ratio a little bit richer for next year. So we're looking at that.
And then my other question is, I heard from a couple principals that are in the midst of it, and they're hearing some feedback from students that, especially in the math portion, that it's very, very difficult, and like some of the concepts aren't even things that they've learned yet. So it was like looking at a foreign language, and it's a new test, so I get that. Have we heard from other schools? Have you been in contact with other districts in schools in other districts experiencing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with my backyard neighbor just this weekend. He teaches in Alvord, and he was talking about his experience. They finished a little bit earlier, and this experience that his students are going through are similar to ours. The Smarter Balance test is adaptive, which means that the difficulty of the questions that you're given change as you answer, and students aren't accustomed to that. They're accustomed to given a fixed piece of paper. You know what's there, you work your way through it, and you can kind of tell what's coming and see what you've already completed, so you can't tell what's coming anymore. In the conversations I've had with teachers here and across my backyard fence, the most surprising finding is with the more capable students, because they aren't accustomed to not being able to answer every question very quickly. But with an adaptive test, it's meant to adjust for that. So I think oftentimes we think about testing as just academic preparation, but I think it's also emotional preparation and just that testing experience. They have to be ready for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mrs. Clapp?
Refresh my memory. What grades are tested? Third through
8th and 11th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know, there's been a lot of pitfalls across the nation with SBAC and the other kinds of testing, to the point that kids are not showing up for the test and all of that. And I have to give you guys, and you know I'm no fan, but I have to give you credit for, you know, kind of slowly looking at the process, preparing our students, and all the issues that I thought would be an issue, like, you know, whatever bandwidth and all of that,
Yeah.
in some of the areas, and all, really are concerns. But I have a question. How do you, if they're adaptive tests, how do you ever compare that and get kind of a normed test if the answer is constantly changing?
They scale the not each student's test, they scale the test overall, and then you can tell where a student places along the performance continuum. So in that way, is superior to the prior test that we gave, because that was scaled within a grade. This is scaled across grades. So we should be able to tell better that way.
Well, just so you know, too, I've heard from parents whose kids are very frustrated, especially with the math. And one of the things we don't want to do, which I'm concerned is happening, is that they get frustrated enough that they throw up their hands.
Right. I don't want that to happen either. And Mrs. Cloud, I know you're a supporter of an aligned system, as I am. And I think that as we learn, this is our first baseline experience with the Smarter Balance, and it's incumbent upon us to align our instruction system and our assessment and support system so that it's not a new experience for students and they see it as part of their learning experience.
Well, thank you for the good job you're doing.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Lock-Dawson?
Thank you, Ms. Allen. I'm like, sorry, there we go. I'll let you know how it goes, Mrs. Cloud, because Martha Rose is doing it next week. All next week she has it.
Yeah,
so.
my granddaughter's doing it too.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how it goes too. I know they've been talking a lot about it, so we'll see. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. I think it'll be kind of neat to see what the results are. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Henson?
Thank you, Mrs. Hill and Dr. Lewis. And I can speak as a parent. My son, Earhart, they took it, 7th grade, completed it. And he said the language arts was a lot of reading in language arts. He's fairly strong at math, and he thought the math was easier for him. But a lot of reading in language arts, and so we'll see how the scores, if they really show. Makes me a little nervous to hear that he feels good about math. Maybe the questions got easier and easier as he took the test. But grateful to the leadership of Renee Hill and her department, and also to Dr. Lewis and his department for the energy savings. You know, and the superintendent, you know, for the things I've been doing, one of my many priorities has been to do a lot of site visits and meet and greet throughout this school year. And I'm pleased to report that this week I would have completed all of my site visits, been in all the classrooms here within the district. I asked for the principals to hold voluntary staff meetings, and they all have done that, and I've had a chance to meet all the wonderful employees that we have in this school district, whether they are working in maintenance and operations or in the cafeteria or in the school sites. And it just is a great reminder for me how many wonderful teachers we have and the great teaching and learning that's happening in our districts. And it's my priority every year, every classroom, every year. As well as the meet and greets. Last Friday I had a wonderful opportunity to spend time with Dr. Wisby, the president of La Sierra University, and to spend some time with his dean of the business college and being their new building and the dean of the education, and talk about possible partnerships that we can have with that university, just as we've spent time, or I've spent time this year with Cal Baptist and UCR and Dr. Isak over at Riverside Community College. So it was a wonderful time to be on that campus. Didn't know a lot about La Sierra before I went, but that was a wonderful, wonderful visit. And then the other thing, as part of the meet and greets, about a month ago, I spent time with our new fire chief, Michael Moore. And he's new to the city, and I'm new to my position. And today was really cool because as a result of that meet and greet, I was able to participate in a fun event today. I don't know if you can see this. This is, it's Stewie the Duck. Stewie the Duck, who I learned is a former Gage Gator. I was talking to this duck, and he shared with me that he was a student when I was a principal at Gage. Now he's in the fire department. But Stewie the duck is the main character of the book, Stewie the Duck Learns to Swim. And Riverside Fire Chief Michael Moore, Captain Dave Hernandez, Senior Olympic swimmer Vivian Stansel, and a member of the Stu Leonard Foundation, which is dedicated to preventing drownings, at a special kickoff event that occurred this morning at Fremont Elementary School. Firefighters will continue to share the Stewie the Duck story and the message of water safety to first graders at all of our Riverside Unified School District schools. They kicked it off today at Fremont, and then went over to Monroe. And it was really neat to see in the classroom these firemen, and they had blown up the big book, and they're reading it, and there's a song that they sing to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And so you see these firemen up there singing, you see the first graders starting to sing, and it just is a wonderful partnership. I'm grateful to the police chief for coming into all of our 30 elementary schools with his team and his men and women helping our young kids learn about water safety as we move into the summer months. And last but certainly not least, grateful to all of you, and again to the great community support that we have. And I know you're all out in several different events. And just yesterday, Mrs. Locke Dawson attended a show and go car show 2015 for charity and the Riverside East Rotary Foundation, which presented her with a giant check for our schools in the amount of $1,740. And we're grateful to East Rotary Foundation and all the other foundations and service groups that support us. But this check is to be used for $1,000. They've asked it to go to King High Remembers, and so congratulations, King High. They have asked for $500 to go to the Special Needs Prom, so congratulations to, again, that group that pulls off that wonderful event every year. And the remainder is to be used at Bryant Elementary School for their holiday field trip, or the Bryant's holiday field trip that they go on each and every year. So again, grateful to the Riverside East Rotary Foundation and all the service groups that support our district throughout the year in many, many, many ways. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. That is good news. Thank you. Okay, we've reached the point of public input, and this allows citizens to make suggestions, identify concerns, and request information. And there is a 3-minute limit on these. We can't really engage in conversation because it's not agendized, but we love to hear your ideas and thoughts. Tonight we have one speaker, Debbie Davis, who's going to speak about the Para-Educator Conference. Para-Educator. Oh, good. Good. It's a group thing. Good.
Okay. A group of us from Riverside Unified, we were able to go up north to San Jose. There was about 9 of us. 4 of us are here. 2 of us work at the same site. These 2 work at another, and then 4 other individuals. We wanted to thank the board for helping us go to this trip. Several of us were paid through the district, others were paid through our union. So we wanted just to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our trip and to thank you.
My name is Martha Mann. I work at Washington Elementary as an IBI assistant. It's an intensive behavioral intervention specialist. I learned so much at the Para-Educational Conference. There were classes on anything that I would need to be more successful at my job. It offered some fun information by Stephanie Nash about getting through difficult times that can be exhausting with laughter, which I felt we all enjoyed. She works with many of the actors and stuff to help them get through different movies or what they might be doing that they have to laugh and look natural. So it was really enjoyable. It helped us. It was fun. The hardest thing we had to do was to figure out which classes to take so we could get the most out of the conference. There were classes on safety, classes to help with nonverbal students, even some for working with other adults. We learned more about our benefits as well as our rights. In one class, we watched a couple short videos of Temple Grandin and Kim Peek, who the movie Rain Man was about. The hotel was beautiful. It was at the Fairmont Hotel in San Jose. The experience was wonderful, and thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and I hope I could go again someday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tammy McBurney, and I'm a campus supervisor at EOC. And this is called the Paraeducator Conference, but this year they actually opened it to every classified employee in the district. So, of course, I jumped on the opportunity as they were offering many different classes this time, like Gang 101, knowing the ABCs of bullying and cyberbullying, changing the lives of at-risk juvenile justice youth, safety in the workplace. But my favorite was Alice. And Alice is a training program that is on armed intruder alert. And the detective that ran the program was so informative. And I know I've sent some of the information to Dr. Lewis, and I brought flyers for all of you to see about this Alice training. The detective, he goes all over the United States training schools and different businesses, and he actually has a seminar set up with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department here the 13th and 14th of this month. I'm trying to get the union to send me, but it was so informative. And what I learned and was able to take from this was just, I came back just totally juiced up and ran into my principal's office. We got to try this and we got to try that. And so I want to thank the union and the school board for allowing us to attend this conference, and the conference for opening it up to others other than just paraeducators. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you had such a good experience. All right, now we have some district employee group reports. First from RASM, Mr. Bernie Merez.
Good evening, School Board President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, school board members. I'm Bernie Merez. I'm going to provide you an update on behalf of RASM. The first item I'd like to report on is the RASM Scholarship Program. We are currently accepting applications for 9 scholarships worth a combined total of $5,000. We're particularly proud of this event because it helps us support students as they pursue their educational opportunities. The second item I would like to report on is the recent results for the RASM board for the 2015-2016 school year. And at this time, I would like to introduce next year's president, Victor Cisneros, and he will introduce next year's RASM board. Victor?
Good evening, Board President, Mrs. Alavi, Superintendent Dr. Hanson, members of the board. Like Bernie introduced me, I am Victor Cisneros. I'm one of the administrators at Ramona High School. I'm one of the assistant principals there. This year, I was honored to be selected as the president-elect for RASM, and even more thrilled and looking forward to next year as RASM's president. I'd like to introduce the board for the 2015-2016 school year, and they are, first, president-elect is Charles Hyde. Vice President for Legislative Action is Gary Reller. Vice President for Legislative Action Local Advocacy, which is a new position this year at RASM Board, is Mike Breyer. Vice President for Membership Certificated is Michelle Cortez. Vice President for Membership for Classified is Tracy Arner. Secretary, Elizabeth Watanabe. Treasurer, Rebecca Brown. Vice President of Programs, Katie Grimble. And of course, past President, Bernie Merez. We do have one more, Communications and Media Liaison, but that'll be named for next school year. I'd like to also take this time to speak briefly about RASM's upcoming scholarship fundraiser. And I brought one for the board as an example of what our kids are working on for RASM. So just to give you a little bit of background, all our high schools received 10 blank tiles, just like this one. and $100 to purchase any supplies that they needed for these projects. And these projects will go at our next leadership meeting on May 14th, and we'll start the selling of them $20. They'll be sold for $20. All the money, all the proceeds go back to scholarships for our own kids here in our USD, primarily art scholarships. This template that I brought is one made from Ramona High School students, and I'd like to give it to the board.
That'd be so nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, do you have a question?
Mr. President. Local, first of all, I'll put my name, I'll buy one. But local advocacy issues, what does RASM have in mind, how does that apply to our district and our community?
So local advocacy, directly speaking for the managers of Riverside and voicing their opinions. In the past, we had PRC. PRC has been kind of combined under the umbrella of RASM, and that's where local advocacy comes in with Mike Breyer.
So that, pardon me, that would be speaking to us, or would you also, I mean, would you go to the city council and speak on the marijuana initiative, or I'm just...
Primarily our district.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your input.
Thank you. That's great. Very nice. That's an interesting fundraiser too. And now we have RCTA presentation by Mr. Tim Martin, President.
Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. Our last few weeks have been full ones. As I'm sure you know, our members recently ratified the tentative agreement with a 96% yes vote. This tentative agreement is a good one. One of the goals established last year in the LCAP was to ensure that all salaries in RUSD are competitive with our peer districts. Based on what we know of our peer districts, this TA is a positive step in that direction. Additionally, in that vote, Amber Caro, a former district, county, and California Teacher of the Year, was elected to serve as one of our 2 middle school directors. She joins an executive board which consists of teachers who have received recognition for their professional excellence at their school sites, locally by both our district and the county, and at the state and national level. In March, that same executive board visited almost all of our schools to listen to our teachers and other certificated staff. We heard many ideas about what would be helpful to support and improve the conditions of teaching and learning in our classrooms, but 3 in particular are worth noting. Most teachers expressed their desire for more training in the use of instructional technology. For many, the pace and scope of change has proven to be challenging this school year. The very favorable response to the Professional Development Day this summer, focusing on instructional technology, reflects that desire for more support. I would say most would hope this is the first effort in a series of professional development opportunities during the course of the next school year. A second issue that teachers shared with us is the increasing impact of disruptive behavior on teaching and learning with a decreasing level of support at their school sites. I know many of you have heard this as well. Teachers are told the reason for this change in school site support is a change in the education code. The only 2 changes in Education Code 48900 as a result of AB 420 are that students in kindergarten through 3rd grade cannot be suspended from school for disruption, and no student can be expelled for disruptive behavior. Teachers believe strongly that disruptive students are undermining teaching and learning in a far greater way than in years past. I believe many of you have heard this as well. This is a concern expressed from staffs at middle schools and high schools, though the problem is particularly acute at elementary schools because they have fewer resources. This year, more than any other in my 5 years, I have informed teachers of their right given to them by the Education Code and RUSD rules and regulations to suspend students from their classrooms for defiance and disruption. If district management believes that suspension from school for disruptive behavior is not the appropriate consequence, then other viable and meaningful responses should be implemented for the benefit of teachers and all students. We also heard during our visits of the anticipation for expanded and extensive counseling services. The arrival of 27 counselors next year funded by LCAP is good news for teachers and for students. Teachers understand that the students with the greatest emotional needs need to have intensive services. But they also told us that they see great value in having counselors on school sites who are able to deal with problems as they arise, provide small group counseling on a regular basis, and come into the classroom and teach skills that will be of social and emotional benefit for all students. The presence and efforts of 27 additional counselors at our schools will certainly be one way in which to help disruptive students be better behaved and thus allow themselves and other students to learn more. And finally, I hope you all can stop by some very tasty tacos by the Taco Guy at Shamel Park next Wednesday from 4 o'clock to 6:30. You've all received invitations. I can assure you, you will not find better tacos anywhere, and I'm pretty certain that you won't find better company anywhere either. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Merton. All right, moving along to our consent agenda. We take these particular issues, consider to be routine, as one item. Do I hear Mrs. Lock-Dawson?
I would just like to pull item F14, please.
F14, thank you. Are there any other items that need to be pulled? Mr. Hunt?
I don't know which one they're trying to find. They wanted about the donations instead of questions.
Donations. Hold on. F5, okay, we pull F5. Are there any other items to be pulled? If not, I'll hear a motion for approval of the rest of the consent agenda.
I'll move approval.
Mrs. Lock-Dawson, Mr. Hunt seconds. All those in favor, please vote. All right, the rest of the consent agenda passes. Let's tackle item F5. Mr. Hunt.
Just some quick questions on, and really, it's always good. It's always nice that our community, every other week, report about how our community people give and care about our schools. I just thought it'd be interesting for the board to understand a little more insight. Harrison Elementary received $4,400 from the Fox Performing Arts Center. Is that? Anyone know about this?
I don't know about that. No, I don't.
I just thought it'd be, because many of us are involved, and you particularly, Mrs. Alavi, in the Fox Performing Arts Center. Just wanted to, when it comes up, I'd like to know how it came about, and it's wonderful. Thank you, Mr.
Hunt, I'll have to inquire and ask. I don't know the details of how it came about and what the connection is, but the value was was in books. It was in kind in books, materials.
Oh.
So as opposed to cash. And so I'll be happy to follow up for you and find out what the connection is.
That'd be appreciated, Mr. Fine. Then Magnolia Elementary, just a question. They received 50 desktop computers with flat screens. That's the computer as well, not just a flat screen?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was from the National University. So do we have an ongoing relationship with them?
We've had a long-standing relationship with them in student teaching and other programs. We have another of our faculty that is faculty there. So like many universities, they refresh their technology on a pretty regular basis. And obviously there's another connection there that would have caused Magnolia to stand out to them in some way, that why they chose Magnolia. happy to find out for you.
Thank you for allowing those questions. I just think it's important we understand who's being so kind to the district.
Thank you. Will you move for approval of item F5?
I would move for approval of item 5.
And a second?
Second.
Mrs. Cloud. All those in favor, please vote. Very good. That item passes. Mrs. Lockdawson, item F14.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment on this. I believe this is probably a carryover from the Japanese students that came to visit the STEM Academy a few weeks back. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so now this is, we're sort of reciprocating and sending a group of our students there?
Well, Sendai, Tohoku University from Sendai, Japan, Sendai being another one of our sister cities in Riverside, several weeks ago did visit STEM Academy and also the Project Lead the Way program at King High School. And so one of the things that the university has is a summer program, and they have invited 4 students, 2 from the STEM Academy, 2 from King High School, with a couple of teachers, 1 from each side, to visit and spend 3 days as part of that summer program. They have a program, an international program that is taught actually all in English, and they have several majors there that students can take part in and get receive their degrees, and so an opportunity for our students to go out and experience that.
I know Sarah Simpson is one of the parents at STEM that was responsible. I think she did an amazing job getting all the students, and she worked overtime for that. But I got an email from her recently that I know they're going to be raising money for these kids to go. And I think that North High, did the district give some money for them to go to China too? I just want to make sure there's parity between that.
Yeah, we're not allowed to use funds for students to travel out of country.
Okay.
So there are certain restrictions in terms of the fundraising. So there will be some fundraising that will need to take place. However, the university has also committed certain funds for hotel stays and things like that for the students, and some travel expense as well, some airfare expense. So some of that is going to be covered, but there will be a need for fundraising to take place, just like the North students had to engage in that as well.
If I can interject, all the students went to China. They did fundraise theirs. The district helped support staff that went. That's the difference.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The students fundraised themselves to go to China. The district helped support the staff members that went to China.
The district helped support the staff
members.
Okay, so that was district funds, and we can do that for staff, but not the students.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making it clear, because I help support the students personally, so okay, that's fine. All right, well, I guess I would move approval then. I just wanted to clarify what was available for the kids.
Great, thank you. Do you hear, Mrs. Cloud?
I'll second, but I have a question.
Yes.
How are the students chosen? That was when I saw that. I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you brought it up.
That's a very good question. So this university, part of their intent in inviting students is to promote their school. That is an international program. Tohoku University is one of the top universities in the world. It's one of the top 30 universities, and they have an emphasis in STEM. And so they have requested to have students who would be interested or open to an experience overseas. And so the decision as to which students are going to be selected or how that will take place is still yet to be decided. This is coming to you as a pre-approval before we do any major planning. Of course, we've already started doing some pre-planning because time will be of the essence. But before we move forward with any very specific such plans, we wanted to make sure we had your pre-approval for this.
Well, they're kind of young to make that kind of decision yet from the STEM school. So they're kind of want to recruit our students, in other words.
Yeah, they're not going to be making any commitments, obviously, but they certainly are interested in promoting their programs in their school.
I hope we don't make the students feel, or they don't make the students feel like they're under pressure.
Absolutely.
Because then that would be a problem. Okay.
Mr. Lee?
I just want to make sure I understood right. I think it's great we heard what experience the kids from North had going to China, so anytime students can be given the opportunity for an experience like that, I think we should take advantage of it. I just want a point of clarification. Did you say that the school that they're going to is giving funds for the students to go?
Correct.
And we can take money from, that's I'm guessing, completely allowed?
It is my understanding, yes.
Interesting.
Not us,
The students can, did we get in, did that occur with the China trip too?
I don't
No.
have that
No.
understanding,
I
no.
Interesting.
I have a question.
Mr. Hunt.
My question, Assistant Superintendent, is this seems to me just different from, when we're comparing it to North's trip, that was an official trip. Why is this, the way you're describing it, why is this an official RUSD sanctioned trip?
The invitation came directly to RUSD as the partnership that we've had established with this with that sister city, and having that university come and visit our sites. They extended that invitation to RUSD specifically.
But this is not. This is an RUSD. This is a King field trip.
King and STEM.
The joint. King and STEM.
Yeah,
Joint.
there will be students from
There's
two
really
students
no
from
difference.
STEM Academy
Okay.
and two
All right.
students from King.
There's no difference between this.
Well, and I want to ask. Thank you, Ms. Allen. And I want to ask, as was brought up earlier, are we planning on this district paying for the two teachers that are being invited? We paid for. How much did we pay, Mr. Fine, for the Chinese contingent that we sent? The $20,000. Are we approving tonight that we would then allow for the district to pay for these two teachers to go? Or who's paying for these people to go?
We're hoping to fundraise as much as possible, obviously, for the students. The students are needing to fundraise for themselves. The university is going to be paying for part of the teachers' travel expenses, their stay, and we would have to, well, that is a possibility for the school district to provide some of the funding for, the rest of the funding for the teachers to participate.
I think the Chinese money we paid, Mr. Fine, not to call you about the audience, but that was kind of late in the game. Didn't we do that right before the whole thing took off?
Dr. Sheffield had made an early commitment out of her own budget to pay for, I believe, 5. And we felt it was important to be consistent in how we treated our staff. And so we stepped up to take care of the other. At the time, it was another 3, became another 4, and ultimately we supported Dr. Sheffield in her resources for the staff. That was, though, I think, as you've pointed out, an official trip of exchange with our sister city.
I don't see this quite as this. I'm not trying to nitpick here, but I don't. Thank you, Mr. Fine. I don't see that this, just in my opinion, a university is inviting us there, but and inviting our teachers, that's great. Just want to make sure we all understand that it could mean we're going to pay their way, because we just heard earlier we have the ability to do that, and we just heard from Mr. Fine. It came up kind of late. We all know it came up the last week, and and we just heard it expanded from the original amount of teachers. It doubled. So I want to be sure we understand this. We're allowing right now, Dr. Hanson, just a blank check to what Mr. Garcia is proposing. The way it looks, I mean, you know.
Well, 4 students and 2 staff members.
Well, yeah, but it started out at 2, and Mr. Fine was just saying it started out at 5, and I think it ended up being 14.
Man, did I create a hornet's nest? I'm sorry.
Oh. I think it's great when we do our official. I just don't know. This seems to be a different kind of animal than what was going on in China, where we was very well organized and all that. This is a university inviting us over there. I want to know what the benefit is.
Well,
other
they
than
did.
kids
They
being
did
recruited.
just come here. Excuse me, Mr. Hunt. They were just here at our invitation. They had a group of students from that sister city come here, and I believe that university was involved somehow in sending those students. So at our invitation, they came, and I think they're reciprocating the invitation. I do think that's the basis of this trip. So in that sense, it is as official as the North trip.
And John Robertson, our specialist for science here, secondary science, who's been working as a liaison, has clarified that the initial offer for that, in terms of what they were offering to pay for, once we found out that they were offering to pay for students and teachers' travel, they went ahead and revised their offer in terms of whose accommodations and travel expenses they would pay for, knowing the limitations that we have here in terms of, paying for student travel and teacher travel as well. So, John,
so they're going to pay for some of it. What you're saying?
Yes.
Students,
No, the university's going to, as far as our teachers go.
not for our teachers.
The university is offered to pay the expenses for the teachers. That includes
Oh.
travel and accommodations over in Japan. The students will have their accommodations paid for. They're responsible for raising the funds for their own travel, and that's the financial arrangement.
It would just be my suggestion to the peers as we go forward, based on what Mr. Fine was just saying, and that the California Code allows. When we see these sort of things, we ought to perhaps put in a not to exceed unless it comes back amount that we're willing to put up. And it just so things don't get, the teacher group kind of grew from what North was, and I think it's just important that the board approves those things in advance as much as possible. So,
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote on that. And that does pass. Thank you. All right, we're to our report and discussion section. Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP revisions, development, monitoring, and annual update. Mrs. Carmen Day.
Good evening, Board President Allen, Dr. Hansen, and esteemed board members. The purpose of this presentation tonight is really to give you early acquaintance of our preliminary plan for 2015 through 2018. That gives you the opportunity between now and June 1st, when we have our public hearing, to look through the content of the plan. We are still pending budget alignment and some metrics that need to be complete, but we definitely wanted to present this plan to you prior to the other community groups seeing the plan. Do you have the binder in front of you? I just want to make sure. Okay.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Thank you, Brent Lee, because I was observing you looking at your binder, and I was like, that is not the binder. Thank you. So that's the purpose of the presentation, is really just to get you acquainted. I'm going to walk you through some portions of it so that you can spend time with it at your leisure. Section 1 is the first section in the binder, and it is on the red tab, page 3. And this is stakeholder engagement. Part of the responsibility of the district was to look closely at the involvement process, the impact on the LCAP, and then provide an annual update on both. On page 3, you'll see last year's involvement process delineated, as well as if you extend past beyond that involvement process, you will see this year's annual update on that process. For example, the 5 forums we had this year, the difference in the steering committee that provided advisement to us, things like that. Also, the priorities were noted in that section, and you'll see the priorities on your PowerPoint. And I just want to run through those because those are the main differences in the plan from last year to this year. We had a really excellent plan that was well written, comprehensive, and in the engagement portion, some other ideas also came up, and that was to continue with the idea of having competitive salaries that allowed us as a district to retain the most high quality teachers and staff. Services for English learners were a very common theme, as well as secondary math support as we enter into the standards transition in Math 1, 2, and then eventually Math 3. Reading by third was also a theme, and that we examine and potentially expand the placement of assistant principals at high-need schools. So right now I'm on the PowerPoint. At the very front of the binder.
Okay. How does the...
Correct, before the red tab.
I'm not sure I see the direct correlation between an assistant principal and reading by third grade.
There is, that isn't necessarily the correlation made there. That is to provide more support at high need school, the assistant principal, and then reading by third grade was another theme. So each of the bullets are separate themes.
Okay. I thought they were connected the way you said that. Okay.
If the priorities are the priorities, reading by third grade should be the first bullet, shouldn't it?
And they're not in any order.
They're not in any
I should have
order?
prefaced that. They're not in any order.
Okay. Well.
I actually planned to say that.
That'd be a good idea, though, Mrs.
To rearrange it, if excellent. Thank you. Definitely.
But new teacher support, better desires together.
Thank you. Also, technology integration, we want to continue that, and personalized learning as a focus, the expansion of that. And then you mentioned new teacher support. We look like we're going to be having more new teachers this year, and we'll need to provide them with support. The Heritage Plan you'll see up there came up as a theme, and since it has been successful, it was recommended that we utilize that same type of strategy for our foster and youth and EL students, which is a really great idea. So these are priorities, not in any order. I'm going to move them in another order in the future, but they're not in any order, and then it's also pending the funding that we have available that we will be more aware of following the May revision.
Mrs. Cloud, did you have a question?
Oh, no, that was my comment.
Great. Section 2. You'll see the beginning of Section 2 on the turquoise, and don't feel obligated to flip back because I do have the information on the slide that follows, but that's the beginning of Section 2, and it's marked with the turquoise tab. And this is where we delineate the specific LCAP goals as well as specific details behind those goals. And if you look at the PowerPoint, you'll see off to the left-hand side, you'll see those 7 needs that are reoccurring from last year's or this current year's plan. And if you recall from the board study session, we determined that we would continue with the same needs, but look at more focused way of consolidating the detailed action steps into those 3 needs. It should help us, 1, be more focused, 2, be able to look at the implementation in a focused way, and then also the analysis of the monitoring data that we will be expected to provide information on. So you have the high quality teaching and learning environments for all students, the idea that we're preparing students to be college, career, and world ready upon graduation, and then finally that our goal is that we're fully engaged students, parents, and the community in support of the short and long-term educational outcomes that we're looking for. So specific to goal number 1, then, you're on the turquoise tab.
Excuse me, Mr. Hunt, did you want to make a comment?
I think we should get, thank you, Mrs. Alvin. I think we should get to goal number 2 on last day.
Okay, thank you.
These are the 3 goals in order.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. And you'll see the details of that on that first tab. So I'm going to have you flip to that first tab so that you can, I'm not going to walk through every one of all 3 of the goals with you, but just for the first time as you're looking at the plan independent of me, you'll see that the beginning of that delineates which related state outcomes are involved, and you'll see all of the information on why we need this goal. So it's the need. And a little bit of a different way of looking at the needs this year is we have the context behind the needs, and we also have very specific information about data that relates to the needs. So there is a gap in, for example, all students aren't reading at grade level, so that's why we have one of those as one of those areas as one of the details behind the goal for our students to be college, career, and world ready. Does that make sense? So then you'll go on to page 13, and that's just underneath the text that creates the need, and you'll see specifically the actions and services that are related to the goal. The very dark, bold information on page 13, in that first area, it says increase the quality and rigor of grade level core curriculum and instruction. And you'll see, for example, at the very bottom, you'll see the idea of instructional support that may involve assistant principals, and that goes right on to page 14. So that's how it is. You'll see the goal at the top of each section, the actions, and then very specific details below there. So as you're looking at those things over the next 3 weeks, if you do have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Gloria Cowder, who's been putting together the information. Okay, so I'm going back to the PowerPoint now. And on goal 1, you'll see, and this is in that section that I just pointed out to you, you'll see some of, you'll see the specific action steps. I mentioned the first one. The second one is the digital integration, infrastructure. All of these are part of those learning environments that we want to create, the high quality staff, and then the safety at all of our schools. And then on the right hand side of the slide, you'll see specifically the changes from the previous year. So the fact that we're continuing to have the staff developers was not in the plan initially, but we were able to come to agreement on that, and we will be offering that as well as the PD days. That's an example. Another example I would like to give, you'll see implementation of initial district-wide STEM strategy, and it is cited under 1.1G. And I highlight that as something new because, as you recall, this is the first year that we put together a planning committee and decided that we were going to have a standard STEM program across our entire district. So that would be additional. Does that make sense to you how this works then? Mm-hmm. So you've got the action steps that we're focusing on, and then any changes to the plan. Moving into goal number 2. Those action steps are closing the achievement gap, the college and career readiness, all of these that provide the preparation for our students upon graduation. You'll see school choice, our secondary counseling, pathways, and preschool programs. And then over to the right, you'll see specifically the tutoring for English learners. That's something we heard through the community engagement process. Our data also recommends that, and so you'll see that on the change from the previous year. You'll see the expansion of personalized learning, PL for personalized learning, the reading by third, a pilot, and staff is still looking at what that would potentially look like, and then the idea of Spanish preschool. Just to highlight a few of the areas that are a change from the previous year.
Yeah, Mr. Hunt?
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. So just, and I'll look forward to honestly reading through all this because I think it's important in our role as trustees in dialoguing with our community we represent. Under college and career ready, when Dr. Using, I believe, Lynn, you were at the dinner the other night. I apologize if I remember that wrongly, but with Dr. Using, twice he referred to in his slides about the lack of and the need for soft skills for young people going into career, and that is learning how to shake hands, learning how to dress, learning how to, for an interview, learning how to show up on time, et cetera and so forth, where to sit. Are we incorporating those in our college and career readiness, or are we looking at giving young people that kind of understanding about the real world?
We definitely do that in some of our academy programs where we have pathways into careers. I will tell you that we have had a committee that come together to talk about college career enrolled ready and to define that. And then they've also talked about what specific competencies will our students need to display in order to know that they're college and career ready. We did not discuss specifically those things, but our student representative, for example, brought up the potential of perseverance, grit, having an opportunity to have a mock interview, some of those kinds of things, and that was generated by the student, which is why we obviously seek out the voice of the student, but we don't have anything concrete in place at this time.
Okay, I understand we don't, at this time, the board's being, please don't add other things at this time, it's kind of late, but I would like Dr. Hansen to have the board, I'm the only one saying that right now, but have that to be a discussion. I think it's a very important attribute of college and career, as is just learning where to sit in a college classroom. Studies show, where kids do better and where they sit and what they do, and just giving that to our kids. That, to me, that's part of the readiness as well, but not for this year. I understand that's.
And actually, those are things that we can involve in our learning without having it clearly delineated in the LCAP at this time, but it would be nice to infuse it.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you,
Okay, we're going to move into goal number 3. And that's that full engagement of our students, parents, and the community in support of short-term and long-term educational outcomes. You'll see the action steps focus is that parent engagement. You'll see that we are also talked about the opportunity to expand involvement and participation in extracurriculars and also decrease that barrier. I hope that you can hear that this is very much the same plan that we had in the past. We just have some of these changes from the previous year. So the main on this, pretty much the information you see there was planned in the previous year as far as having that student assistance program. However, we will actually be hiring the counselors and putting them in place in the schools next year. And I think that will be a great response to some of the behaviors that we're hearing about at some of our schools, and as well as this child welfare and attendance staff that we targeted this year. And we'll have in place next year. You'll see the Family Resource Center satellite, and that's the idea to actually have take our resource center and have a satellite at some of our schools that may have underserved populations. So that's exciting. Going into section 3 then, this is on, you know what, actually before I do that, I want to draw your attention to one other part as you review the plan, and that goes all the way back to the yellow tab. And the yellow tab, 49 pages, and that's the annual update. So if you recall, we had 15 goals last year, and this is the annual update. We had to look at each of the action steps and write a response to each of those in our LCAP. So I just wanted to point out what that was behind the yellow section. And then just following that section on page 83 of the plan, is our supplemental and concentration funds and proportionality reporting form, and that is where we have to generate, the amount of money is generated by our supplemental concentration grant students, which we know are our foster youth, English learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So that information is pending the budget alignment, but I did want to draw attention to you as well. And the expectation is that we'll have justification for how we spend those funds, and that is exactly where that will show up in the plan. Finally, I just wanted to give you a brief timeline of the completion of the plan until you see us again June 1st for the public hearing, and we're next taking it to the DLAC and CDAC. We're also going to be eagerly awaiting the May revise on May 15th at the latest. We'll be looking at the budget alignment on May 20th to be complete. And then on May 26th, our intention is to bring it to the Finance Subcommittee along with the budget so that you can see that budget alignment prior to June 1st. And that wraps it up with, of course, the June 1st public hearing, and then on the 22nd, the request or recommendation that it be ratified with the budget itself. And that is it.
All right, Mr. Lee, do you have a question?
I do. So when we do the presentation to these community groups here, is it going to be presented just like this?
Actually, we will probably just not, we probably won't give them the details. We'll probably highlight each of the 3 goals and delineate the changes from the previous year.
Okay. So do we think that, because it's like, maybe it's just Monday or I'm tired, but it's hard to try to follow it. And I know that we don't want to put a lot of information on a slide when you're doing a presentation, but I mean, I feel like without some of the backup data, it's hard to give context to what is on the goal. So I mean, maybe it's just me, but it's just kind of hard to understand what it is that we're trying to get feedback from.
Also in the sleeve of your binder, you'll see a packet, and actually I initially did that for put this packet together for myself just to make it very concise. But you'll see each of the 3 goals on the first page of that, and then the action steps. And if you flip to the second page, and this is in the sleeve of the binder.
So this is the information that will be provided to give context.
Yes,
to the
and then if you
presentation.
look at goal number 1 on the second page, it gives you not only the goal and the action step, but some pretty detailed topics below that are addressed in that specific action step.
So you would, if you were trying to follow along, this is a little bit easier to understand. If you were trying to follow along as a community member of one of these groups, you would use this as like a reference guide.
I think.
Flip through the detail.
Yes.
Like
but I wanted you to be aware of where to look in each of the sections of the plan.
And then has the LCAP committee been involved with this process at all, or was this not something in the scope of their work?
The challenge or the charge of the LCAP committee was to participate and make decisions or provide input on the community engagement. And then this year we did add a couple of components which involved some monitoring information and also monitoring information.
So they helped with the stakeholder engagement
They helped with
part?
the stakeholder engagement, and that was their main charge, but we added to their charge monitoring information. And then I also had Deputy Superintendent Mike Fine came and actually talked about the budget with them. Okay. I will also like to add that we have had a discussion at our last steering committee meeting about potentially changing the charge of the committee so that they can provide more input to the actual implementation of the plan so that we can best utilize. And that was actually brought up by some of our community group members. Thank you for the questions.
Mrs. Scott?
Could I just add for me, it's a little confusing that these, is there a way to connect this to this in a way that, we're not like a highlight what stakeholder engagement is? I think, and I know this is what we have to do, but for most parents or even board members, getting bogged down into details gets pretty difficult. So if we have like these bullet points, but connected to the page.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Instead of like flipping back and forth, is that?
Right.
Is that?
I can do that.
Okay.
If you notice the actual, on each of the slides, I have reference to the specific action item, just not the page number. But that's a great recommendation. Thank you.
We're slow learners. Thanks.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been requested that we should take a short break. Let's stop right where we are now and take a 10-minute break, please, and be back here at 8:10. Thank you. What's that? Holding up. I'm going to bring the meeting back to order. Board members?
Board members.
Board members?
Board members. Board members.
Please come in.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Mills. We're now at the disclosure of tentative agreements and memorandums of understanding between RUSD and its employees, represented by the Riverside City Teachers Association.
I actually have 2 tentative agreements and 2 memorandum of understanding. The first one is a tentative agreement regarding in article regarding child abuse. We have added the word annually. We usually do our child abuse training, mandated reporter training every other year, and now we have to do it annually. The second tentative agreement is regarding wages, Article 8, and that is a salary compensation for 4.55%. The next one is a memorandum of understanding for a teacher on special assignment for Read 180 teacher. We wrote that they would have a flexible work year in order to provide training to be available before the commencement of the student school year and after the conclusion of the school year. And the last one is a memorandum of understanding regarding the 2 professional development days prior to the school year.
All right. Is there any discussion? All right. Thank you very much. We're now going to open up several public hearings. The first one is, and I will open it up, public hearing prior to adoption of Resolution 2014-15, a resolution of the Board of Education of Riverside Unified School District granting an easement and right-of-way to the city for a temporary construction easement at 6401 Lincoln Avenue. Mr. Fine?
Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Alvey, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. The item that's before you is actually step 2 of a 2-step process. You'll recall in your last meeting you passed a resolution of intention to grant this temporary construction easement to the city of Riverside for the repair and resurfacing of Lincoln Avenue. Tonight you have this public hearing to take any public comments on the granting of that temporary easement, and later on your agenda you have the resolution to approve, if that's your ultimate decision, to approve that easement. Be happy to answer any questions. It is temporary. The work is out to bid to be done during the summer months.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt?
Just a suggestion, Mrs. Allaby, but with your okay, I would ask that we would take if it's okay to do that, once you close the public hearing, we would jump right to the resolution, just cover them back to back.
Oh, okay. We can do that, I believe. That would be
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Oh, is there anyone here who would like to speak to this public hearing? And I'll close this public hearing. And upon Mr. Hunt's suggestion, we'll skip right over to the action item, the resolution of the Board of Education granting an easement and right-of-way to the city for a temporary construction easement. Did you want to speak to that?
I would, thank you, Mrs. Allaby and Mr. Fine for your report. I would move approval of item I.1.
1.1, I think.
Is it 1? Okay.
Well, maybe it's I.
Okay.
Oh, you're right, it's I.
I isn't Icarus.
Do I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote. Okay, that does pass. Mr. Fine, H.2, a public hearing, we'll open a public hearing to adoption of resolution number 2014-1545, finding the acquisition of real property exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and approving a filing and recording of notice of exemption.
Thank you. Again, Mrs. Alvey and Dr. Hanson, members of the board. This public hearing and its associated resolution on your agenda tonight, as the board is aware, you are investigating and pursuing the acquisition of a parcel of land And while the actual purchase and sale agreement for that parcel has not been completed, we're going to start the, if you will, the waiting period, not the waiting period, the comment period for the start that process now so that clock can continue for the next 30-plus days to take any public comment. The hearing is just that, a hearing regarding the district's desire to be exempt from CEQA for the purchase of this property. In this particular case, roughly 10 acres. The district is buying for land banking, some potential future educational facility need that we may have. We do not at this point have a project that would require us to go through CEQA, only the purchase of the land, and it's not our intent to change the land or any aspect of it through just purely the purchase, which is the actual exemption that you'd be considering. In the future, if you have a qualifying project that you want to bring forward, whether that's a school or the expansion, in this case, the expansion of King High School, or another type of project, then you would go through the full CEQA process at that point related to the project that you're proposing. And so this public hearing is, again, in support of Resolution 1415-45, which is a resolution on the exemption for CEQA. And with your approval, we would file that exemption tomorrow, and it would start the clock running for its basically 35 days till for the public to comment.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, did you have a comment?
Is any public? I'll wait for public comment.
Public comment. Of course. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the public on this issue? If not, I'll close that public hearing, and we will go over to the action item that corresponds.
No, I want to ask a question. Usually, public has to speak first. That was my.
I was going to allow you to speak at the action item.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Sorry.
Which is item I.2, the finding the acquisition of real property exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Now we'll have a discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez.
Mr. Hunt.
For that misunderstanding. Mr. Fine, just we're buying this is a pretty old, and your due diligence, this was an old grove. This is a pretty old stand of trees, right?
Planted in the 60s.
In the 60s. And to your knowledge and investigation that you've done for us, there wasn't any, it wasn't a smudge pot holding place we've seen around town in the old days, as far as we know.
So, Mr. Hunt, our due diligence on this property, it was conducted for the purpose of the land banking, not for the purpose of a specific project. So it's relatively minor. I don't think there's any doubt, given its age of the grove, that and recall that it was once a part of a much larger grove. Yes, sir. That is now King High School and the surrounding Woodcrest area. So there will be the normal agriculture issues that we'll eventually investigate should you use the property for a school facility, and go through not only CEQA but the full review by CDE and the full review by the Department of Toxic Substance Control, and do soil testing and a whole variety of things at that point in time.
Do you recall, Mr. Fine, I know it was a little bit before your time with us, but did King have any toxic issues with?
The biggest issue at King was actually rock that had to be blasted. Dr. Lewis, do you recall agriculture? It was standard residual, if I recall the paperwork.
We had the standard removal process. There was a lot of litter that was buried that had to be taken care of at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fine. Thank you, Ms. Allen.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, we did no invasive testing.
Yes, sir.
So we didn't do any drilling or ground sampling on this particular property, just a visual due diligence and record check.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cloud.
I was just going to make a motion for approval.
Thank you. Motion. And then Mrs. Lockdawson seconds. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote now on I.2. All right. That does pass.
Thank you.
Going back to H3, the public hearing, open the public hearing prior to adoption of Resolution 2014-1536, resolution of Riverside Unified District finding the exchange of real property is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and approving the filing and recording of a notice of exemption. Mr. Fine.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey and members of the board. This is, in many respects, the exact same item you just considered, just a different two parcels of land. The first is an existing district-owned parcel at 9174 Indiana, which is the old, we know it as the old Hawthorne Elementary School, and the potential opportunity to exchange that property along with other consideration for another parcel of land. And so the exchange of Old Hawthorne for a vacant 10-acre site, again, for some potential future school use down the road, and again, the only action we're doing or contemplating at this point is simply the procurement of the land, not any planned project on the land at this point. And so again, the CEQA exemption purely for that procurement and acquisition of the land. This one has just that extra step in it, in that it involves an exchange of two parcels, an existing district-owned, and then in exchange for a new parcel, as opposed to the one you just considered, which was just a straight-out acquisition.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item at the public hearing? If not, I'll close that public hearing. Move to item I.3, which is the corresponding action item for this California Environmental Quality Act CEQA filing and recording of notice of exemption. It's been moved for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt, you want to make a comment?
No, I was going to move for approval, that's all.
Okay, great. Any further comment? If not, let's go ahead and vote on that. That does pass. And then, let's see, finally, item H.4, public hearing. Open a public hearing for 215-16 initial proposals for negotiations submitted by the Riverside Unified School District Board of Education with the Riverside City Teachers Association. Mrs. Mills.
Yes, the Riverside Unified School District is submitting initial proposals for collective bargaining, and the Riverside Unified School District would like to discuss class size, secondary student contact, also Article 10, hours of employment, collaboration time structure, after-school meetings, IEPs, SST 504 meetings, and substitute coverage. We also want to, in addition, there are a number of issues that were sunshined this year that we did not finish in the negotiation cycle that we would like to continue discussing. For the next H5, the Riverside Teachers Association has submitted an initial proposal for collective bargaining, and they want to discuss Article 12 class size, TK class size, combination classes in elementary, Article 10 hours of employment after school meetings, and there are a number of issues that we did not finish that were sunshine that if we have time that allows, they would like to continue to talk about some class sizes in secondary, increase aid time in classrooms, and hours of employment, duty schedule, after-school activities for secondary, after-school meetings, coverage by teachers for teachers who are absent, and non-student attendance days for elementary teachers.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to item H4 or H5? If not, we'll close those public hearings. And we'll move along on our action calendar to item I.4. Mr. Fine.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mrs. Alvey, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. This item that's before you, Resolution 44, continues a process that the board is becoming very familiar with, and that is the refunding of outstanding debt to take advantage of lower costs on behalf of our taxpayers. Specifically, Resolution 44 and its an accompanying material is to refund in the amount of about not to exceed $54 million of our Series 2006 or Series B general obligation bonds that are outstanding. As the board's certainly aware from simply the general economy and the media and so on, interest rates continue at an all-time low, and timing is such that the existing Series B bonds are coming up on a time period in which they can be called or called back for advance payment or refunding, as the case may be. In this particular case, we're within the 90-day window of that call date, which allows us to do a current refunding as opposed to some type of advance refunding that involves some other types of activities or considerations. This would be this refunding activity would be a competitive sale, which means on the date of sale, and included in your materials is a notice of sale. We basically would do it just like we do any kind of construction contract. We put a notice out there, solicit a bid. In this case, we're just like we would if we were buying something. We're looking for the least cost borrowing. And so underwriters across the country will have the opportunity to bid on our bonds on that day of sale. The estimated savings by doing this refunding is roughly based on current data, and obviously understand that can change between today and the actual date of sale, is roughly $6.5 million, roughly 12.8% in interest savings. The board's policy 3470 on debt management requires us to look at a transaction like this when we can achieve 6% savings. So based on today's information, we would be doubling that threshold of savings. And that equates to roughly $1, just under $2, about $1.80, $1.90 per year per $100,000 of assessed valuation. So not dramatic tax difference, but nonetheless a savings to our taxpayers, our homeowners, and property owners in our community. Attached, the resolution is, you're very familiar, goes through all the various recitals and authorities. Attached in this transaction is a preliminary official statement, a paying agent agreement, an escrow agreement, a cost of issuance custodial agreement, and the notice of sale. Each of these documents will have some revision as we get closer and closer to the sale date, but they are in substantially final form before you tonight. Be happy to answer any questions. Also with me is your independent financial advisor, Adam Bauer, President of Fieldman Rollap, and your bond counsel, Kim Byrons of Best and Krieger.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt.
In the absence of Mrs. Alavey for the Finance Committee, Mr. Lee and I sat in with Dr. Hansen and Mr. Fine, his staff, and Adam, and it was a very comprehensive review, and is exactly what this board wanted to see happen with the the financial policy that Mr. Fine just alluded to, and therefore I would move approval of this item.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second? Second from Mr. Lee. Any further discussion? All right, please vote.
Kudos.
That does pass. Thank you very much. Okay, now we come to approval of recommended instructional materials for secondary English language arts. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, good evening again, Mrs. Alavey, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. And this past fall, a novel study committee was convened comprising of teachers and librarians, secondary level, with the purpose of establishing a process and updating a list of novels. The Novel Study Committee is submitting this evening new additions to the RUSD approved list for consideration. I'd ask Lisa Kells, our Instructional Services Specialist for English Language Arts Secondary, to come on up and explain to you that process and the list of novels.
Okay, I've been watching everyone all night, so I'm pulling this close to my voice. Good evening, Board President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. I am so excited to bring the work that the Novel Study Committee did for the 2014-15 school year. I believe we've created a rigorous process for our teachers to follow that serves our due diligence to our students here in Riverside Unified School District. So the purpose of our committee was to establish a process and update the list of already approved RUSD novels. And for each grade level, 7 through 12, there are 30 or more novels on each list. These novels have already been through board approval, and then they've been on our list for quite a few years. So some teachers have asked, can we possibly look at the list, update it, and see if we can add a few new novels? So that's what we got the opportunity to do this year, so we were very excited about that. Our committee members consisted of 25 teachers, 3 librarians, and we had 5 meetings from the fall of 2014 to the spring of 2015. We met with the board subcommittee twice, once in the fall and once in the spring. After every meeting, we posted anything that was discussed and everything that was decided upon on our Haiku site for all teachers to see so that everyone would have an opportunity to give feedback. We also updated our department chairs at each site and our Common Core coaches at each site. We wanted to have multiple avenues of information going and flowing from us to our school sites and our teachers so everyone would feel like they had a voice even if they weren't exactly on the committee. So this rigorous process, what we did is we took our already existing RUSD policy for textbook adoption and we combined it with some of the things we used to do in the reconsideration committee process to evaluate novels. So we put those two together and we created this process. So the teacher would identify a need or a gap in our curriculum and they would check with a reputable source such as the American Library Association or the California Department of Education recommended list. Once they checked those sites, made sure the novels were on there, they would then consult with 3 other teachers to thoroughly read the novel, check it and evaluate it for complexity, for any controversial issues that may arise, and for literary criticism. Once that was done and all the paperwork was filled out, it was then sent to the department chair at that site and the school site administrator, and they would sign off on it going forward to the committee. So once the committee got this packet, they reviewed all of the proposals and they made a recommendation this time for 12 novels to go forward. And it was then advertised in the press enterprise and on display for 30 days. And now we're bringing it forward to you for board approval tonight. My next 2 slides, there's only 2 more slides, so show the 12 novels that were approved to go forward before you. They show the title, the grade level that we're recommending, the author, and who proposed the book, and that it was approved after we voted. It was very much a roundtable situation. No one had any more power than anyone else. We all had an equal vote at the table. So these are the first 6 novels altogether between this side and the next. We have 4 books going forward to add to the 9th grade list. We have 2 books going forward. Well, actually, one's a play and one's a book going forward to the 10th grade list. We have 4 going forward for the 11th grade list. And finally, we have 2 going forward to the 7th grade list. And this is our last slide, and it shows the last 6 books that we're recommending to be added to our list of already approved RUSD novels and to update what we have.
All right.
Thank you.
We have some questions.
Yeah.
Mrs. Cloud.
Hello. This did come before the instruction subcommittee. They gave a very thorough report. And if I understand correctly, each of these books was voted on not necessarily unanimously, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Most of them were, but correct, yeah.
And with that, I just have to say in good conscience, and I'm familiar with a lot of them, and I love to read, and many of these books are awesome. But The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, As you know, I sit in the instruction subcommittee. I cannot in good conscience vote for. And so I would ask, and I know I don't want to make anybody feel awkward because I can't approve it on the list, but if it was pulled from the list, I could approve the rest of them. So my fellow board members, it uses vernacular that is in this day and age not very appropriate. And even though it's streetwise and smart, the language that it uses is very pejorative. So that's my comment. So,
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, as Mrs. Cloud said, this did come before the subcommittee twice, and I want to commend the committee on their work and their time they spent on this. I mean, as you can probably tell, you can't really tell from these slides, but it was a very exhaustive, thorough, transparent, democratic, equitable, thorough process. And as she stated, no one had more power than the other. And while there was disagreement, it was discussed at length. And in the end, I mean, they had clear rubric for approving each one of these books. Everybody had to read them, present them, state their case, how the student would benefit. And I don't see why not. We shouldn't approve all of these novels. Mrs. Cloud did mention this book also in our committee meeting, but my comment was that there are lots of books that are currently approved that use vernacular that might not be appropriate for students to use in today's world. And they weren't appropriate at the time they were written either. And I think it gives context to the historical time frame that it was written in and allows the student to kind of reflect and think about the words that were chosen and why the author chose to use them. So I can agree with Mrs. Cloud's recommendation. I think we should go with the committee's recommendation and approve all the novels.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt?
Yes. To that book, what age group is that planned for?
That is planned for, I want to say, ninth grade.
It says ninth.
Okay,
Yes.
so, and it is on, since I tripped over this earlier this year, it is on the California Department of Education's approved list for high school.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, I do understand that it has profanity and situations of homosexuality and bullying, et cetera, but your committee, go ahead, ma'am, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, but your committee reviewed, obviously was aware of that, your teachers. So what was your answer to that?
Well, I think this book was originally brought up because it's, in language arts, we have a very strict guideline on adding books, and in some other instances, it's not. So these books are already on campuses in some ways being taught by other disciplines that don't have this. So when they go in and they see class sets of these, this is, it's kind of like a tease. And evaluated by other programs, this book was highly recommended by those programs. And that this gives us a critical look into poverty, and it gives us a critical point of view of Native Americans and living in today's world and trying to deal with some of the issues that our kids probably can't deal with and so or wouldn't even understand. So I think it gives a different perspective using language of someone in that situation. And just because we wouldn't want our kids to use that language, I think it's a way for us to give insight into that world. So I have to trust the teacher that they're going to do the best they can to teach the novel and to bring out the best in it and to guide our students into what the enduring understanding or essential questions that we want them to understand for that. So I have trusted my teachers.
So this novel is available in the library right now for a young person to check out?
No, it's available for classroom checkout.
Classroom checkout, all right.
Yes.
But you say it does open up the eyes of the reader to the challenges that Native Americans have.
Yes, it's a different perspective than what they're used to, I think.
And with sincere respect to my colleague on that, I'm very interested in anything that will help, that's appropriate, that will help our young people understand because we have Sherman, which is one of the four remaining off-res schools right in our city, and I don't want to get into the soapbox, but we need to be more aware of and maybe reach out. That would be talk about exchange programs. So I would move for approval of the list as presented.
Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you. There's further discussion. Mrs. Lock-Dawson.
That's okay. Just a couple things. One, I noticed there's some nonfiction books on here.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that's what
But
I was
it's
gonna ask
novel
the same
list. So I don't know if you maybe want to just change the name. It's just nitpicky.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And actually, our novel study committee pointed that out. You know, this list is very, very old, and that's one of the things they wanted to change is the description of what the novels were, that they are books and plays and other text. They wanted to update that. It is directly tied to our Holt curriculum. So some of that may be changing in the future, but for now, Holt is still our core. So we wanted to leave that snippet in, but definitely that was brought up by the committee
Okay,
also.
okay, so I'm not crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that the title of the organization or the list needs updating. Just very quickly though, so is this our policy that to approve? Is that our policy is that we have a group that reads the books and then we do this democratic process? This isn't something that is given to us from the state, correct?
This is not something that's given to us from the state. This is something that we've never actually did it in this way before. We've usually gotten our novels through an adoption of a textbook. They usually offer you so many novels per textbooks that you buy, and that's how we add to our list. This is the first time we're actually looking at novels for novel's sake and not tied to a core curriculum like Holt Reinhardt.
Just because when I heard about the process, I was actually very surprised that it took so much to get a novel approved. I had one of my daughter's English teachers was telling me about it. So what workaround or what other option does a teacher have, or if he or she, like, is there a permission slip, or how does that work?
Well,
if it's something that isn't approved or on the approved list and they feel it's necessary to
Well, our concern, especially this year with what happened earlier this year with certain novels, was that we did our due diligence and really try to get the background and any type of controversial under control before we even took it through our normal textbook adoption process. I believe it is up to the school site administrator to approve whether a letter is sent home to the parents for parent permission slip if there is a novel that is not on the list. I believe the district's standpoint is there's so many novels on the list to choose from that we would encourage them to stick with the list.
Okay, so it's incumbent on them to make a case for something not on the list then, and they have to get that approved by their principal to send
Well, the principal is just acknowledging, and the department chairs that it's going forward.
No, the letter you would send home.
Oh, the letter, I would suggest putting the novel, all the novels that I plan to teach in my core syllabus so that parents know from day one, these are the novels on the list. If I have some questions on how you're going to teach it, you know from day one. I also know that teachers often, if there is a concern, is there an alternate novel to use that still gets across the same point? And this changes year from year.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Cloud.
Just one last comment. I hope you understand that I think you guys did a great job, and I admire the process. You know I do. I just want to make that clear because I bow to my colleagues, and we're not separating the vote. So I have to vote because the main problem I have with this book is the profuse use of the N-word. And although we do teach other books that have it, it is a historical perspective. And this novel is not really that. And there are some other situations, but that is in this heightened, aware culture that we live in today, that's a real concern for me. So that is why I'm voting as I am, and I really do thank you all, and, I understand your perspective, but this is mine.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
I'm going to, if it's okay with Mr. Lee, I'm going to amend my motion out of respect for Mrs. Clouds. I know she's served on our curriculum committee for so many years. The approval of this list, and we'll vote on the Indian, excluding the absolutely true diary or part-time Indian, and vote on that separately.
Mr. Lee? Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen.
Okay. All right. I would surely rather see it say novel/nonfiction list, but,
It will.
All right. Let's take a vote. We are voting on the acceptance of all of the books except for The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. All right? Let's take a vote on that. All right, that does pass. Now, shall we tackle the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by itself?
Mrs. Alavi, if you will, I would motion for approval to include in this list, to amend this list to include the Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian.
Okay, do I hear a second? Mr. Lee seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, let's please vote on that. All right, that's 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you,
very much.
colleagues.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Now we will go forward to the approval of classes offered at Riverside Adult School during 2014-15 school year.
Yes, good evening again. I'll ask Mr. Jim Dawson, Director of the Riverside Adult School, to come on up and explain this last item on the agenda for requesting your approval for the courses offered at Riverside Adult School for 2014-15.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Good evening, Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. We are respectfully requesting the board's approval of the course titles that we are offering at the adult school for the current school year. We brought this to the board a year ago in preparation for our accreditation visit, and we're under the assumption that would suffice unless we made any major changes to the courses in terms of adding or deleting or overhaul of the course outlines. But we have found from our colleagues in the field that the federal program monitoring that the district will be participating in next year will include a review of the the adult school's federal funding, and apparently the folks that will be coming from the adult education office are expecting us to have an annual approval of the courses of study, even though this ed code was put in place when we collected apportionment for adult ed, and we no longer do that. So to be safe rather than sorry, I requested this come before you, and again, respectfully request your approval of our courses.
We have a motion for approval. Do I have a second? And Mr. Hunt seconds. Oh, sorry. Mrs. Cloud, do you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to ask, so, because when I looked at it, I thought 14, 15, so we're approving it.
We're approving it for the current year, Miss. Yes, and that's Meyer. I thought we were in compliance for the current year, but apparently we were, based on what they're doing for the federal study, we were not, so we're requesting it now, and probably in 2 or 3 months, I will be back for the 15-16 courses.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and vote on that. That does pass. You are approved for this year. All right. I want to remind board members and superintendent that we will meet in closed session following this meeting. Okay? In the same meeting room, Dr. Hanson? Okay, in the same meeting room. Now we go to board members' comments. Mrs. Lagdas?
Sure. I just